My grandmother had this
That's
for
a treasure.
years.
That's a treasure.
What does that mean? I mean, I know it's Secretary of the House presented to Laverne Ormby, but is this?
Well,
Have you signed any of these?
you know, when I saw this on the wall coming in, I immediately looked at the date of 1977, the fact that Governor at that time Ned Ray McWhirter signed it. John Wilder, whom I served with before he retired, and Ray Blanton was governor at that time. Ned became governor. The office that I had in the plaza, the War Memorial Plaza, was formerly Ned Ray McWhirter's office. I never did find the Nilla wafers, but they said when he was Speaker of the House, that was his office, and I was fortunate enough, and as a history buff, it was a great honor for me to introduce that when people came to look at the office. But when I see this, I realized that Senator Longley at that time honored your grandmother. I didn't know that Laverne Ormby was your grandmother.
Yeah.
And I realized that
Painter of verse.
it's fantastic, and how many thousands of these are cherished around the state. But out of 7 million Tennesseans, very few people get them.
I don't know what she did to get it, or how he knew her, or what the story behind it is.
Well, it talks about she's waging a battle with cancer, and so So someone sent this to Nashville to honor her and to honor her life and to honor her efforts, and it's really a great thing to hang on to. It's also interesting. If you go to Nashville right now, there is a room in the Capitol that very few people go to. It's actually my favorite room. It's called the Legislative Library. And there's an old 150-year-old spiral iron staircase, 3 or 4 stories, filled with books of every act that was ever done in Tennessee. So you could go to the year of 77 and look at House Joint Resolution 43, and your grandmother will be forever in the history of the state of Tennessee.
The annals.
The annals of time. And it's actually one of my favorite rooms in the Capitol.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at this real good, but that's the book she read, A Time for Everything.
How about that?
A Time for Everything, and she wrote another one after that. Oh, To Everything a Season. So this is a really big deal.
It's a really big deal, and the fact that all of those men have passed away, Blanton, McWhirter, and Wilder, it's something that is to be cherished by your family, and I was thrilled to see it when I walked in.
Now, the Wilder, Gene Wilder's the actor, right?
Gene Wilder's the actor. John,
no relation?
No relation. John Wilder was the lieutenant governor at the time, the longest serving lieutenant governor in the state, in the history of the state, would fly in on his own personal plane called Jaybird, and they would just clear the skies because he would just land whenever he wanted to.
Well, when did you were there when he was the speaker?
Well, he was lieutenant governor when I was first elected in 06. Governor Bredesen was the governor, and so they completed their terms until 2010 with the new election. So I was there for the final 4-year term of Governor Bredesen, and the final term of John Wilder before the Republican took over in the majority. In 2010, Bill Haslam was elected governor.
Yep.
Ron Ramsey took over in the Senate. And then we had a little interesting couple of years with Kent Williams being the Republican, the first Republican speaker. He then became an independent. He's from Elizabethton up in northeast Tennessee. And then it was, after that, it was Beth Harwell for the remainder of my term. And Governor Haslam, so it was a great time to be there.
What are the duties of a representative? You were the representative. How many are there in Tennessee?
99. There's 99 state reps, and there's 33 senators.
And so it's like Bradley County. You were the representative for.
You know, I shared Bradley. Bradley was large enough population that Dan Howell, Eric Watson.
Yeah.
Eric Watson
That's
was
right,
the first state rep. He preceded me. He was elected or appointed. You might remember.
I remember,
Miss Rose, and all of that was done right in 04, 05, and Eric was appointed in 05 and then reelected in 06. I joined in 06 when Senator, or at that time Representative Bunch, who held my seat, Dwayne Bunch, now Judge Bunch,
Yep.
went up to take Jeff Miller's open Senate seat. So there was a little bit of fruit basket turnover,
Yep.
and it allowed the House seat to be open, and I ran for it. There was 5 of us that ran in '06. And the duties of a state representative, I would get that question when I would speak
Yeah.
at schools, and I would explain to the kids, do you know what a mailman does, a mail carrier? And they would all nod their heads, and I said, it's exactly what I do. I take your wishes and your needs and whatever it is that you want to be accomplished, and I take that to Nashville and I deliver it on your behalf.
To who?
Well, you bring it up in committee. I had a great example of a local man who actually changed the entire law for the state of Tennessee. Do you know Larry Crooms, who makes the signs?
Yeah,
Makes
he
great
does.
signs?
Yeah,
So
he did T.L. Larry's.
he sure did.
Yep.
So if you see that seal on your grandmother's, there was a law passed that every sign in the state of Tennessee had to have an engineering seal put on it, and it was just a bill that was passed, and a lot of us conservatives would call that government overreach. That
All right, now
every sign-
say that again. Every
sign
sign
from the size of T.L. Lowry's at
Yep.
Office Max,
Yep.
all the way down to your yard signs that say Burris Construction.
Uh-huh.
Every sign, no matter what size, would have to get a seal of an engineering stamp of approval, which would, depending upon your engineer, could be $70, $75 to $150 extra on the price of the sign. And so Larry Crooms called me and actually emailed me. These were the early days of getting emails, and he said, hey, Representative, I think that there's been a mistake made. You're going to put individual, independent, small sign guys like me out of business. And I said, you know, Larry, that is an unintended consequence. We're pro-business. We're not going to try to put people out of business. Mm-hmm. So I took this idea and grabbed this email and had my staff research the bill, and sure enough, it was an unintended consequence of something we had passed in Nashville the session before. And so Larry Crooms from Cleveland, Tennessee, brought it to our attention and changed the law so that it had to be a size of a certain size sign to require an engineering. If the wind can blow it over and kill somebody, you got to have an engineer's
So
approval.
a billboard sign has that?
Has to have an engineer's seal of approval. It sure does. That it won't blow over.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That it won't be damaging or injurious to somebody. Yeah. So one person. They ask me all the time, can one person really make a difference? And I say, absolutely. One person can change the law. You can win by one vote.
Now, wasn't it in Riceville, Tennessee, is buried a man that made the deciding vote for women to vote in Tennessee?
100%. We just celebrated that a few weeks ago. The 100th anniversary of his work. He represented the Riceville, Nyota area.
Yeah.
And Representative Byrne.
Yeah.
And it was his mother. You talk about your grandmother, Miss Owenby.
Yeah.
His mother wrote a letter. Remember, 100 years ago, there wasn't emails and text messages.
She wrote it to him, right?
Wrote a letter to him that he opened the morning of the debate, and the gist of the letter contained a remark that said, I'm very proud of you. Please vote for suffrages, which is the women's right to vote. Don't make them wait. Don't delay. You wouldn't be there if it weren't for your mother. God bless you. Love you.
She was right.
She was exactly right. And my mom has reminded me of that a couple of times about that letter. So we all have a
See, that would have been about what year?
Let's see, it's 2020, so 1920.
Long time
Yeah,
ago.
1920.
I've never been to the gravesite. I know Alan Jones says he went to the gravesite and actually saw it.
I went with Speaker Harwell. We commented on one of the anniversaries, and she was there, invited as the first female speaker. So the DAR, the Daughters of the Republic, asked her to come, and she said, Kevin, would you join me? And I said, of course, Madam Speaker, I'd be honored. And so we drove up to Riceville, and we're there at his grave marking, and it's wonderful. At one time, that was when he was a state house representative. He's like 22 or 24 years old.
Like you. That was what
That's exactly
you did
right.
the same thing.
And then he actually then was promoted to the Senate and actually represented Bradley County. So at one time, the man that voted the one vote to make women, give them the right to vote in America, that was ratified by the U.S. Constitution, He at one time represented where you and I are sitting right here.
Did he represent Riceville and here at the same time?
When he was in the State House, it was just Riceville, Nyota, McMinn. But when he moved to the Senate, your
Larger.
Your area is larger. I would always marvel. I worked very closely with Senator Mike Bell and now Senator Todd Gardenhire, and I would marvel at, I had one city council, I had one city mayor, two, Gary Davis wasn't, but you have to remember we had another House rep that represented the county. So I really only had to focus on one library, one mayor, one city hall, one set of government. Mike Bell can't drive his truck across his district in one day. It's so large. And all these small cities, Riceville, Claxton, Cleveland, all of them, he has to keep track. Todd Gardenhire, Collegedale, Ooltewah, Harrison, all of the different areas and governments that he's got to deal with. I was very fortunate that I only had to
And it's kind of round.
It very much is.
Or a square. It's not long.
It's, no, the U.S. Congressman Desjardins, his is a very long and narrow. He goes from Cleveland all the way to Murfreesboro, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And you would leave. I would leave my house, and the entire time I was driving to Nashville, for the most part, until I got past Murfreesboro, was Scott Desjardins' district. So very long and very narrow, very difficult. Cleveland was the cherry. I would tell people, or people would ask me about it, and I would say, I'm the donut, I'm the munchkin, I'm the donut hole. And then the rest of Bradley County was the rest of the donut.
When you say you send it to your staff to research, what would they research? What's to research?
So I had a great staff, great research analyst, and a great staff there. When Celeste Thomas,
did you have to hire them?
No, they were fortunately there. And as I became chairman of a committee, they were assigned to me. Celeste has been there, I think this may be her 35th or 36th year of being a staff person. So remember, I was only there 12. So when Celeste would pick up the phone, the governor's office took it immediately. She had great seniority and the ability to find things out. And so I would say, okay, somebody do the research and find out when this sign bill, this engineering stamp requirement was done, was added on as an amendment in a committee. No one really thought it's going to have a far-reaching, problematic end or outcome. And so that's actually something that Senator Bunch, I still call him Coach Bunch, because he coached me the whole time I was there. He's a very famous wrestling coach for
I think he was a coach, too.
100%. So I would say, thanks, Coach. And he would say, Kevin, we spend 50% of our time passing legislation. We spend the other 50% of our time fixing what we just did. And he's really right.
Sounds like the construction business.
Well, it's very similar. We just didn't get paid as much as you did.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: when they once they researched it, then you take it to the committee.
Correct.
And say, hey, committee, here's the deal.
So again, if it was done closely enough, we could revisit our actions and possibly change it within the same session. Or you just file a new bill, and so you would literally get a very large piece of paper, a parchment like that, and it's a large folder, and it would be written. I think when I was there, I think it's probably more now, but when I was there was about 35 lawyers, and that's all they did. In fact, we have Mr. Mundy, M-U-N-D-Y. Do you know Dr. Mundy?
No.
Karen Mundy. She's a Carol. Her son is a lawyer for the General Assembly. And so there's about 35 full-time lawyers that are there 12 months out of the year, and they research, is what you're trying to do constitutional? Is what you're trying to do legal? Does it go against anything that's already been done, or can we use something that's already been passed and simply amend it? So that's what we did. We didn't recreate the wheel.
And is amending it legal? Is amending it...
You just have to get the same number of votes, and the same way it was passed originally, you have to get the same prevailing majority.
Do they have a lawyer that's assigned to that one? In other words, if you had three, they would be disagreeing.
That's correct. Or they have a specialty. You know, some lawyers specialize in education. The lawyer that helped me with this amendment specialized in the law that is concerning codes and enforcement and regulations. If it was a law about roads, Chairman Dan Howell is now Chairman of Transportation. There's a guy that has his expertise in roads. There's another guy that has his expertise in cemeteries or nursing homes. So it just depends on what your area or scope of the bill is. And before our Republican majority in 2010, from 06 to 2010, and then after that, we actually reduced the number of bills that you could file. But prior to that, there were times when Senator Bunch and Senator Bell, they would present more than 100 bills a session. And I would try to limit mine because I like to follow them and keep track of them. And but I remember before the Republican Party, the Conservative Party limited government. I believe that we should limit government and reduce it as much as we can and quit wasting your money. John Stanbury, you know Dr. John Stanbury, he would always remind me, we were always really good at sending out press releases and talking about what we had done in Nashville and how we had saved money. And he would say, Kevin, you do realize that that's our money. The money that you're working with is our money. Those tax dollars are not yours.
Well, that's what you meant.
But I then was able to very carefully, from that point on, say, you know, Dr. Stanbury is right. That's Dee's money. That's not my money. And so whenever we would have a tax rebate or a tax reduction of any kind, when we reduced the tax on milk or reduced the tax on whatever we were doing, I would always be very careful to say, you know, Dee, this is your money that I'm giving back to you to put back in your pocket.
Rather than saved you money.
Yeah, I'm giving it back to you. Death tax that we eliminated, the estate tax, so when you die, we've now made Tennessee the cheapest place to die. Which is actually interesting because for years, for decades, when you and I were growing up, Florida is where people retired to, and Arizona, Sun City.
They'd leave here and go to Florida.
That's exactly right. They don't have to do that anymore because we've eliminated the estate tax, we've eliminated the death tax, and soon the hall tax will be fully eliminated.
You mean the death tax, if you die in Tennessee, no death tax?
That is correct. We got rid of the death tax and the estate tax because people were, and I don't know the story of this house, Mr. Mitchell's house, but there were times when the family would have a beautiful home like this on this very expensive piece of property, and they couldn't afford the taxes. I don't know if you're watching the TV show right now, Yellowstone.
No.
And it's about the largest ranch in the nation is in Montana, and the daughter explains to the dad, Dad, if you die, we can't afford to pay the taxes on this place.
We'll go broke.
We'll go broke and lose the farm. We'll lose everything. So that's not just a Montana problem. That's across the nation. And there's a guy who worked for President Reagan, Art Lafler. He created the Lafler curve.
He's been on the news quite a bit, hasn't he?
He has been. They call it Reaganomics.
Reaganomics, yeah.
And he actually created that.
Yeah.
So again, when the Republican majority in 2010, Speaker Harwell wisely said, we need to hear from one of the smartest Republicans in our nation about the economy of Tennessee. So they brought Art Lafler to us at a Republican retreat. And it was at one of our state parks. And forgive me for not remembering, but it was way out in the middle of nowhere. I remember I didn't have good service. And I couldn't call my wife.
Yeah.
But it was out in the middle of nowhere. And he said, you know what you need to do to make Tennessee great? Get rid of the death tax, the estate tax, and the hall tax. And we all kind of looked at him like, yeah, okay, great. So we started that process. Not easy, very expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars. And Governor Haslam and I had a very direct conversation because I was a very pro get rid of the hall tax. People in Cleveland and Bradley County left our town and moved to Florida because they were unable to pay those exorbitant taxes.
Those three, the hall tax, death tax,
and I would send out a press release and say, hey, you know, we're the tax-free Tennessee. We have no income tax. Well, the wealthy at a certain level actually do have an income tax. It was called the hall tax. And taxes and dividends and gains on their profits, or if they sold a company or sold a bank or sold their stock, is very, very expensive to live in.
Where did that money go?
Into the state budget.
Just so general, it didn't like go for this or that.
And so when Governor Haslam said, so Representative Chairman Brooks, how do you expect to pay that huge $170 million deficit when the hall tax is eliminated? And I smiled and said, politely, Mr. Governor, that's your problem, not mine. You have to balance the budget, not me. I'm just telling you, my
Yeah.
constituents, the people that vote for me, at the very beginning, you said, what does the representative do?
Yeah.
The message they've asked me to bring to Nashville is we are tired of you saying we're a tax-free, no income tax state when we really do, since 1931, have a whole income tax. When I first got there in 06, some businessmen in Cleveland wrote me some pretty direct emails and conversations and letters about the hall tax, and I worked at Lee College. My salary I didn't have
You didn't hit
stocks. I didn't hit it, and I said, I asked the same research staff,
Yeah.
tell me about the hall tax, and thankfully it was passed in 1931, long before I got there, and I was able to say, hey, this was not my idea. It's a terrible idea, but you're right. We're either a no income tax state or we're not. This is black and white. This is not gray. And so I worked the entire 12 years to eliminate it. And it wasn't until my 12th year that we passed the bill to begin the reduction. It's such a big number, and it will impact the budget so badly, we're having to do it over a phased, what we call a healthy diet. Chairman Sargent, who we lost last year to cancer, he was a huge champion of that. I was vice chairman under him, and I followed that lead to say, this is the right thing to do for Tennessee. Now we'll do a Paul Harvey moment. Once we eliminated those 3 taxes, Art Lafler and his entire family of either 13 or 16 members all left California and moved to Tennessee because we did what he told us to do, and we did become the most affordable state for senior citizens, for retirement, for death, and for the elimination of the hall tax. So
because we don't have it state income tax.
That's correct. That's correct. So all of my family, all of my relatives live in Georgia, and so when they get their paychecks at the end of the month or the end of the week, they've got a pretty hefty income tax that they have to pay, a state income tax, and
that's not reduced by how much. That doesn't reduce what you pay the federal government.
That is correct.
So
it's
why
in addition
have
to,
it?
It's in addition to. Well, and that's one thing that our state is different. Tennessee is different. We pay cash for our roads. People talk about all the time, why is it taking so long to pave Highway 60? Well, we pay cash as we go. We don't borrow. They build roads faster in Atlanta. I say, yeah, I used to live there. I get it. But they also go into debt to build those roads, and we're an incredibly conservative state. We don't want to go into debt to build roads. I don't believe that's a healthy thing to invest in. How long does pavement and asphalt last? It's not
long.
It's not a great thing to invest our money in. I would much rather invest our money in the state retirement fund, which is one of the best in the nation.
Well, that's interesting.
It's I thoroughly enjoyed the 12 years I was there. It was the greatest honor, the greatest calling of my life, and miss it, quite frankly. I'm a history major, and that's so full of history there. But when Mayor Rowland asked for me to, he knew how to say it. You and I both had a dear friend, T.L. Lowry.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to pray about something.
In other words, I want you to do it really bad.
And I thought about it for a while, and I know Tom was here last week, and I wish he was here today. That's actually a really good story. He asked me in 2016 to run and to think about running for mayor, and I said no. And it wasn't until the 2018 cycle that he asked me again, and would I consider it, and I told him I would pray about it. That's the good Church of God answer. That's the way. That's the way we say things. I'll pray about it.
Yeah.
And I actually really did. Yeah. And I really came to the answer that it really was my time. I know this is not a Bible verse show, but Deuteronomy talks about how God orders the steps of a king, and promotion comes from God. And so, elections are interesting for those of us who have a deep faith, because we know that God is really in control. And so I prayed earnestly about running for mayor because I was having a great time in Nashville. We just gotten $10 million for Cleveland State and $25 million for the Veterans Home and Exit 20. And I sort of had just figured out
Tom Rowland Bridge.
Tom Rowland Interchange.
Yeah.
I had just sort of figured out the Da Vinci Code of how to get things for Cleveland, which is kind of what you go there for.
Yeah.
And so I was very thankful for all of that great season. But I also realized, God was getting me ready for a season in my hometown that I hadn't really thought about. I hadn't really thought about what can I take from the things I've learned in Nashville, and how can that help my hometown? Well, it's interesting because, you know, I mentioned to you earlier I was working on my speech out in the car about Monday's council meeting. Mm-hmm. There will be something that comes up on Monday about a road or a bridge. Well, I can very easily pick up the phone and call the Commissioner of Transportation because he's a very close friend of mine. Mm-hmm. There could be something about corrections or the jail. I can pick up the phone and call the Commissioner of Corrections. I'm very blessed that God has given me friendships, 3 governors that they asked me, do I want a new cell phone number? And I said, oh no, 3 governors have my cell phone. I don't want to change it because God forbid that they need me or I need them, mm-hmm. and I lose those numbers. So I'm very fortunate that there's a really Old Testament verse that says, for such a time as this. You know, your grandmother wrote the book.
Very similar.
For everything there's a season.
Yeah.
That's also a great verse. Mm-hmm. And I actually believe that, mm-hmm. Dee. I actually think that this is the perfect season for me to step into a role that Tom Rowland had for 28 years and continue that role of excellence, that we can do better. That, you know, yes, Cleveland is a great town. City with Spirit is doing great, but we can do better. We can have better roads, better schools, and attract better. I met a lady today that moved here from Michigan, mm-hmm. walking around my subdivision earlier this afternoon. And that's the kind of thing. She said, well, you know, my husband, his job is in Chattanooga, so we're looking at Ooltewah, but we love Cleveland. And I said, well, that's great for me to hear. And I never said I'm the mayor.
Yeah.
It scares people. Plus, a few hours ago, I didn't look like the mayor.
You didn't have your makeup on.
I was working out in the yard. I know it's Sunday, and I'm not supposed to, but I was doing some yard work and just saw her walking around, and Kim's mom and dad are thinking about moving here from Georgia. And so
it seems like this mayor from representative is a step down in the hierarchy of politics.
You know, so do you ever remember a guy named Thomas Tip O'Neill, Speaker of the House in Washington?
I remember that name.
Great big Irish guy, full of life. He had a very famous saying.
He argued with Reagan,
didn't he?
Did.
He had a very famous saying.
They had argued the whole time.
Argued the whole time.
Yeah.
But had a great friendship at the same time. Mm-hmm. And his great famous saying was, the best government is the government closest to the people. So Nashville, you're one step away from the people. Washington, you're 2 steps. Mm-hmm. Mayor, you're the closest to the people. So think about this, Dee. Senator Bob Corker used to be the mayor of Chattanooga. Mm-hmm. Governor Bill Haslam was mayor of Knoxville.
Yeah.
Being mayor is a very powerful, very important place. I did have a lot of people, especially in Nashville. Why would you step down to run for mayor? And I said, I don't think it's a step down. I feel like it's a step up. In fact, I'm going home. And I get the honor of serving and helping my hometown. When you get to Nashville, you drive, I'm sure Representative Hall, who fills my seat that I held for 12 years now and is doing a great job. Representative Howell, you get in your car, you leave your family, you leave your wife, you drive 153 miles. You may or may not see anybody that you know. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are.
How long are they there?
Monday through Thursdays, every week for the length of session. Sometimes you start in January and don't end until June or July. Sometimes it's August. This time they got called back by the governor for a special session again. So you think you're done and then you get called back.
So they're theoretically just moving to Nashville.
You are gone a lot. Ask my wife, ask my children. I left when they were at Cleveland Middle School, and I still regret being gone for such a huge, substantial part of their very important development.
Did you ever have to come back at the noon meeting and then for something and then head back the next morning?
All the time. Soccer games.
And thought this is ridiculous.
Dance recitals and I would actually be very envious of very wealthy people that had airplanes and could fly them back and
Yeah.
forth, because there were some members that did fly often. And yes, you do get very frustrated, but being here at home and being able to help every day, because Dee, when you're in Nashville, you check into a hotel and you order room service and you can go to the gym and you can show up, or you don't have to. No one's there checking roll until you're at the house floor. So your office hours, your every other part of that day, unless you're a disciplined person, you basically can do whatever you want. And here in Cleveland, Cook's or Church or Cracker Barrel or anywhere you go, you're always the mayor. And you're always on call 24/7. Like I said, this phone that
You've got 2 phones, I noticed.
the mayor's office, they provide you with a phone that's connected to the 911 system. And people ask a lot, what's the difference between being mayor and being a state rep? State rep, you weren't up or notified 24 hours a day like you are as mayor. Accidents, overdoses.
So if there's a wreck on the interstate and they dial 911, it rings your phone?
No, what it is there's called an administrative CAD report. So it has to reach a certain level. If you just break down on the side of the highway, I'm not going to get a text.
Yeah.
If you have a flat tire, if
Get
they're
stopped for speeding.
Yeah, stop for speeding. I'm not going to get those. But if it reaches or is raised to the level of an administrative report that they think the mayor and city council ought to know about it, wreck with injuries, entrapment, Paul Huff is closed down. Because what happens when Paul Huff is shut down and one of your buddies is stuck in traffic, you're trying to get to a closing, you're going to call me and say, hey, mayor, why is Paul Huff shut down?
So now you know.
Now I know.
So all the city councilmen would be in this loop.
That's correct. That's correct. The city council, city manager, and the mayor. And then it also increases your prayer life, because you realize that these overdoses and these accidents and you can see when life force has been dispatched, and you realize that's somebody's wife, somebody's husband, somebody's child. I have 2 children. You instantly look to see, where is that accident, and is it in relation to my loved ones? So it keeps you on your knees. My prayer life has tripled.
Plus, my church is now emailing prayer list.
100%.
So I'm getting, we could be praying all the time.
That's well, and I miss my friend Dr. Lowry. He would always sort of encourage me and have a word for me. And now a dear friend, Pastor Max Morris, sends out those prayer requests to me, and often mentions that he's praying for the mayor and the city council. And that's what I tell people. They ask all the time, what can we do? And I say, pray. Pray for me as the mayor, pray for my family, pray for our city council. We meet on Monday. And I said, it's not going to be easy. This is not an easy time to be in government or be in politics. And so I said, I covet your prayers.
Are y'all having regular meetings or Zoom?
So we're having modified meetings right now. If a councilman doesn't want to come, the governor extended the executive order that he gave, so we do have the ability to have an electronic meeting. The last 2 meetings, we've all been there 6 feet apart. They kind of changed our seating arrangement, social distancing. We wear the masks, but the public has to log in on Facebook Live or Zoom. And then if you're presenting, you can log in. I'm just going to use this for an example. If there's a plat of land that you want to speak on you can call in, we provide a number, you can text, or you can comment on Facebook Live. It's not the greatest situation right now. I'm looking forward to opening back up. But I mean, we're having to take temperatures, and you got to wear the mask, and there's hand sanitizer everywhere. So I get it. And we've had, quite a few, 8 or 9 is the last I heard, of city staff. Now that's all of us. That's City Hall, Works, Public Works, Enforcement, Police, Fire. So 8 or 9 is not a lot of people to be having COVID right now. Only 155 active cases as of today. No deaths in over a week, so I'm very thankful. But we are making sure that we're not putting people in danger to come and talk about a subdivision plat.
But you have to have the meetings. You got to go
Have to.
forward. I guess.
Government can't stop, and so we can't just cease and desist. We just have to do the best we can with what we're given, but I am looking forward to it. It's sort of like the restaurants opening back up and churches opening back up. Mm-hmm. It's good to be back together, and the safeguards that we have in place. I was at a viewing yesterday, and it's difficult. These are difficult times to lose a loved one or lose a friend, because you can't have the full visitations and the funerals, and it's just, as a matter of fact, I was standing there, and two people did not recognize each other because they had the masks on, and they were related. It was uncle and niece, and I thought that was you, but I couldn't tell with the, so they pulled the mask down real quick.
I've been some places with my mask, and the other person's wearing a mask, and we know each other, but neither one of us is wanting to talk, and we just play like we don't recognize each other. So it has its advantages.
But it's interesting. And again, my bank right now is still drive-through only. What's going to happen when we start going back into a bank lobby with a mask on your face?
We don't have to label and robber.
I don't know what we're going to do. I'm looking forward.
Otherwise, they won't know it.
I'm looking forward to being fully open again, and all the restaurants reopened, and I'm excited about that.
Of all the cases we've had in Bradley County, we've got more than we ever had total, but people are going around more than they used to. So I guess some of the fear has gone away, even though more people's got it.
I think there's a realization of everyone's probably going to get it at some point. And with correct medical treatment, it's very survivable. I'm living proof of that. I was hospitalized for 11 days.
If you had to go through it again, they said, okay, next week you're going to go through that again, would you dread it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was the most painful. There's two things about COVID, and didn't even know we were going to talk about this today.
First, how did you get it, do you think?
Well, there's no question that Father's Day weekend, I was in a couple of different places where breakouts occurred. We've narrowed mine down. They do the tracking. Yeah. We've narrowed mine down to the Church of God related. Either the Sunday at church or the Monday that I went back to the office, there were cases in both areas, both buildings. I was exposed. I was actually doubly exposed on Sunday.
Did they call you and say, hey, you're exposed?
No. You started hearing that other people were tested positive, and you're like, oh man, I sat on that same pew he sat on. And then, oh great, I was in his office. Yeah. We were this close together. No masks, no. And so you start realizing, but what people talk about the COVID symptoms, you hear a lot about, fever and cough, sore throat. What people don't talk about is the psychological. Yes, it was the most painful illness I had ever had in 53 years.
Once you heard that you might have been exposed, how long did it take you to feel something?
I'm going to say it was strongly 10 days.
Before you felt anything?
Before I felt anything. And it was another 14, it was a full 14 days before I even went to the doctor.
So the idea of it hitting you within 4 days is not the case?
I personally don't think so.
Yeah.
I thought it was kidney stones. I've had kidney stones before, and my lower back was killing me. So I asked him, don't judge me.
Yeah.
I said, hey, would you run over to Dollar General and get me some cranberry juice? Just the biggest thing of cranberry juice you can find. And she was like, what's wrong, babe? And I said, my back's killing me. I think I got a kidney stone. So she ran across the street, and on a Thursday, on a Thursday, and that last week of June, and Friday-ish, next day, she's always takes such good care of me. Hey, babe, what can I get for you? You need anything? I said, yeah, I'd love some more of that cranberry juice. She goes, baby, you drank it all. It's gone. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, you consumed the entire, and I said, I am still just dying. That was Friday. Saturday, worse. Sunday, worse.
You're back.
Monday, please take me somewhere. So something's wrong. So I went to the clinic, the walk-in clinic, and they tested me out in the parking lot, the little tent, and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
triaged like a like a MASH unit.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you're negative. You're negative for COVID.
Because they stick that thing in your nose?
And I said,
did that hurt?
It was uncomfortable. I'll say that.
The swab?
Yeah. It wasn't deathly painful, but it was uncomfortable. It's up there. It's very, very deep. They call that nasal pharyngeal, up into your pharyngeal area. And I said, hey, can you give me a flu test? I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Sure, Mr. Brooks, we'll give you a flu test. Well, whatever you want. They pricked me for the flu test, or however they test the flu, and maybe that was in my mouth. And sorry, Mr. Brooks. So I'm in the tent for the test. Go back to my car. Wait. Back to the tent. They come get my results. COVID negative, flu negative. So I'm back to the tent, and the nurse says, "Let me get the nurse practitioner to come listen to you. I hear something." And so they kind of.
This is the same day.
Oh, this is Monday.
Yeah.
After I drank all that cranberry juice.
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, I hear you're rattling around in there, and I'm going to give you a Z-Pack and a nebulizer, breathalyzer, and if you don't get any better, you might need to go to the hospital. Negative COVID, negative flu. Heard something in my chest. Start taking the Z-Pack immediately. By Tuesday, I feel I really can't get up. I mean, I'm that sick. I'm just flat on my back, moving from one couch to the next in my house.
Like the flu.
What worse? And you're confused. I feel worse than I've ever felt in my life, and they just promised me I was negative for both the flu and the COVID. What do you think? I mean, your brain is just like, I don't know. So my daughter, who's a nurse at Vanderbilt, called home, and Kim explained to her what's going on. She said, if you don't take him to the hospital, I will. And so Kim kindly drove me to ER. However, in the COVID world, she just had to drop me off, and it's awful. So I had, love you, I didn't want to kiss her because I felt so bad. Didn't want her to get it. We told each other we loved each other. She said, please come home to me. And I go into the ER and fully thinking, okay, this is Tuesday, June the 30th. I'm the mayor, so I got to be out of here by Thursday. Yeah. So I'm already thinking what I've got to do on Friday. So check me in, do some tests. They do the quick X-ray. Just, bring the thing in the room and put the slate behind you. Yeah. It's about the size of your grandmother's legislation. And I remember it being just really cold. Hold still, hold your breath, click. Whatever they saw, they didn't like. And they immediately took me on my stretcher, on the gurney from the ER, to the CT scan, which is the donut, and it's the big, you're clicking and beeping and you can't move. And then they put the dye in my veins. Have you had that procedure? Yeah. Not comfortable. No. Burns, you know. And again, whatever they saw, Mr. Brooks, you have bilateral pneumonia. And I said, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah. They said, double pneumonia. They said, you're a very sick man. And I said, so what does that mean? Tell me what that means. Well, you've tested no for COVID. They tested me that day, right then. Again. You've tested no for COVID, but they said, your lungs, they said, have you ever been in a car accident? And I said, yes, ma'am. Have you ever seen where the windshield just shatters? It stays in place, but the new breakaway glass just, and you can't see out of it. It's opaque. Just tiny little cracks. So that's what your lungs look like. Literally looks like a shattered windshield. Completely full.
Of what?
She said COVID. So in the ER on Tuesday the 30th,
The ER physician said, "You've got COVID. I just can't prove it." She said, "Walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck." I'll never forget those words as long as I live.
Probably more sure than you would be if you had the test.
She
That's
said,
why tests are so.
so the infection specialist doctor came in. So this was the ER attending physician. The infection specialist doctor came in, Dr. Asma Khatri, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "Mr. Brooks, when we look at your picture, it's what they show us COVID looks like. You are the classic COVID patient." Now remember what I said though, they tested up here.
Yeah.
Then the second test, that was Tuesday the 30th. The second test on came back Wednesday negative. Tested me again on Thursday, came back Friday negative. Tested me on Saturday. So Friday was July the 4th. Saturday was the 5th. Negative, negative, negative. And the infection specialist doctor said, "We're testing in the wrong place." Go down in his lungs, and very uncomfortable, very painful. But once they gathered that specimen, instant positive. What was the problem? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they could not give me anything for my COVID. They were giving me antibiotics, some of the strongest they could find.
Because you had pneumonia.
So we're going to treat this like bacterial pneumonia. But it turns out on my discharge paper that they gave me, it says COVID SARS pneumonia. So my pneumonia was actually COVID pneumonia. And I just read this week, so here I am now 2 months past, and everybody, now that I'm a COVID survivor, they send you everything COVID related. And so I got a report that was just sent out this week from Tennessee Oak Ridge. They used the Oak Ridge supercomputer to crunch 2 billion genetic codes, sequences, and it's learning, the supercomputer is learning more about COVID than we've ever known. And it talked about 2 things, how it actually tricks your body, and the reason people are getting sicker, Kevin Brooks was getting sicker every day. And the reason you're getting sicker is COVID tricks your body systems into working against itself. So when you get a liver transplant, you take anti-rejection medicine, so your body doesn't work against itself. COVID works against your body and tricks the cells into your blood vessels start leaking and organs start failing, and that's why people are dying, even when they're on a ventilator. Even when you're on oxygen, you're suffocating. Another thing that report from Oak Ridge said was a jello-like substance, just as thick as jello, is being produced in your lungs, and even though they're forcing oxygen in you, it's not getting where it needs to get. I did not know it at the time, but I was up to 8 liters of oxygen 24 hours a day being forced into my body. That's the oxygen out of the wall. It only goes to 10, and that's when you go to the next step, which is the ventilator.
You had 2 liters to go.
And I didn't know it. One of the administrators, when I was thanking them for saving my life, she said, when did you know how sick you were? When did they tell you just how sick you were? And I said, they never really did. They shared it with Kim, and I was trying to communicate with Kim on FaceTime on my iPhone, and we had my son and my wife and the doctors, and we were trying to converse and confer on what my next steps were. And Dr. Marcus, his title is hospitalist. So all the doctors at the hospital, the top one is the hospitalist, and there's one on duty at all times. I think there's 3 or 4, but there's only one. He's the general.
The hospitalist.
And so all the other doctors listen to whatever he says. And he came into my room. They called him back from Ooltewah. He lives in Ooltewah. They said, this guy is really, really sick. And this was Sunday night, late Sunday night. And he said, I know you're the mayor, but I am retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and you are going to the ICU. Up to that point, I had said, that's where people are dying.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to ICU. I don't want to be on a ventilator. And he said, I'm going to overrule you, and I'm going to overrule everybody else. You're going to ICU now. And that's when my turnaround happened. because I was, the same time I had just tested positive. They got the test back that they had taken on Saturday. They moved me to ICU. They immediately began the clinical trial drugs that they had gotten from Vanderbilt.
Which is what?
Remdesivir.
That's what Trump keeps talking about.
Yeah.
Remdesivir. He calls it remdesivir.
It's remdesivir. I'm sorry, there is a D.
Yeah.
It's an antiviral drug. Ironically, it was created when HIV.
And for malaria. I think.
And for malaria. So HIV, malaria, COVID are all viruses. This is an antiviral drug. So they gave me high doses of that, which they had to get from Vanderbilt. Thank God, Vanderbilt.
Now, when you're laying there before they're giving you the remdesivir, and you're taking 8 liters of oxygen.
Yeah.
Describe that minute.
You know, you're.
Did your chest hurt?
I was so sick, and they had pumped me full of so many drugs, antibiotics that were physically making me ill.
Like stomach
just
swirling around?
Horrible. Just sickness that you can't imagine.
Throw up?
Oh, yeah. All of it. Everything.
Did you throw up during
Everything.
that time?
All the time. I mean, it was just, so I would beg them for something to let me stop, and it was Phenagrin and Zofran.
All those things.
Yeah. And nothing was working, so they're giving me more and more. So I would sleep for 20 hours.
Could you take a deep breath?
No, zero.
Just go breathe like you'd be
So,
breathing.
it was just
The constant,
like
you're in a slow
I
jog.
felt like my Labrador, just constantly, and which is ironic. When I called my buddy Mike Carter, who also had it at Erlanger, same thing. I knew that sound the minute he picked up the phone. I recognized it as my own, and you're all these words of elephant sitting on my chest, fish out of water. You know, people are trying to describe it. It's just literally, you try and take a deep breath, and you can't. You cannot inhale. Your lungs are so full of whatever this jello.
It's like you're just sucking it in to hear.
Exactly. And my lungs were full. And so my pulmonologist and my other doctors told me, hey, it's going to take a while for you to get your lung capacity back. In fact, they brought me this tool that you blow in, and you got to blow up to a certain number, and they wanted me to do it 3 times a day to regain the capacity in my lungs and get this stuff out. Incredibly large doses, remdesivir.
So when they sent you to the ICU, you had not been on remdesivir.
No, you couldn't get that. It's a clinical trial that only COVID patients can get. So until I tested positive for COVID, I couldn't get the donor plasma, which is the other drug that saved my life. And they kept sending me, your buddies would send me all these things from Facebook about these high doses of steroids.
Yeah.
There's a doctor in Texas that was inhaling them. But remember, you couldn't get anything in my lungs.
Yeah.
So they reversed it and put them in my veins. So I was getting incredibly high doses of steroids, remdesivir, and donor plasma. And it's that chemical combination, that chemical cocktail, that I fully believe saved my life.
It wasn't, like when you're real hungry and you got a craving, you say, oh, that's salt and vinegar potato chips. That did it. None of those 3 were the thing. It was.
I'm confident it was the 3 of them combined.
It was. Yeah. You think one by itself did nothing.
I think one by itself was not strong enough. And I think that's why we've had no deaths in Bradley County in over a week, maybe a week and a half now, because our team at Tenova, they're still having deaths in Bradley County. Hamilton County. They're still having deaths at Erlanger and Memorial.
You think Tenova's got the combination
I
down?
do. I fully give those doctors credit. The infection specialist and the pulmonologist, Dr. Rutledge, is one of the ones that said, this is the regiment we're going to put you on. It saved my life. It saved the other guy in the next room, because we were communicating. We were on the same pew the Sunday of Father's Day.
Who's he? Do you know him?
Oh, yeah. Very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say his name in case he doesn't want me to.
Yeah.
But I was in room 107. He was in room 108. And so as I would get my treatment, I would text he and his wife, be sure they give you the remdesivir. Be sure you get your donor plasma.
What helps having somebody in the same boat?
I'm very grateful that God allowed me to be, for such a time as this, helpful to other people. And I can tell you, part of the reason I've become a donor plasma spokesperson is there was a day, Dee, where the doctors and nurses came into me and they were very solemn. And they said, Mr. Brooks, you're going to get your donor plasma today, but somebody else needed it more than you do. You're doing better.
But those were the three.
Those were the three.
Yeah,
But there's a shortage of my O positive donor plasma. The guy next to me was I think A negative. They were having trouble finding his.
So you have to have this, not just donor plasma, but the same,
Correct.
like A
Blood type.
I think I'm A positive,
Correct.
which is rare. So
Very rare.
It'd be, if I got it, it'd be slim
Well,
chances.
that's why I'm telling people, we just had one on Friday. Please, 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 if you've had COVID, get your test, get the application, and get signed up to donate, because someone before me donated O positive and it saved my life. But there was one day where they came into my ICU room, and it was called a reverse oxygen chamber. So they had to come into like a submarine, they had to come into the outer chamber, wait for the air pressure to change, come into my room, you hear the rush, the air where it exchanges like that. And they came in one day, and I know there's a rhythm, there's a pattern.
Yeah.
And I noticed there was more than normal. There was like 3 people instead of 1. And I noticed they were kind of talking outside before they came in. You can hear the voices. And they were concerned. They when they walked in, they were immediately, the looks on their faces. Because remember, they're just as much covered up.
Yeah. You're only looking at the crow's feet.
And so I'm looking at their eyes, and I thought, okay, whatever we're about to talk about can't be good. And it was to tell me, you're going to be okay, and we're going to get you your stuff, and it's going to be here tomorrow. But today, there's someone sicker than you, Mr. Brooks, and we've got to ration this donor plasma to somebody else in ICU. And I was feeling better. This was by Wednesday. And
Now, when did you get transferred to ICU?
On Sunday, and by Wednesday, I was doing better. It was that fast.
How about the Monday? I mean, as soon
Mon-
as they gave
yeah.
you that combination,
Monday-
was it like 15 minutes later or 6 hours later?
I was better in 24 hours. It was
You
that
can
fast.
tell you was headed in the right direction.
My fevers stopped. My night sweats stopped. It's funny, they told me afterwards, they didn't want to scare me, but double pneumonia can kill you and COVID can kill you, and I had both. And part of the double pneumonia is just, and Dee, you know me,
Yeah.
I'm not a sweater.
Yeah,
I'm not a heavy sweating guy.
No.
I'd have to change clothes 3 times a day. Change the sheets on the bed.
Did you lose any weight?
I didn't because of the steroids. As a matter of fact, I came out, there's one,
Yeah.
somebody saw my picture
Yeah.
in the paper and said, my God,
You're
Brooks,
pumped up.
what'd they feed you? It's because of all the steroids. But it saved my life, so I don't care. I mean, thank God. So I'm now eating more healthy and doing better and exercising.
Within 24 hours, you
Yeah.
were able to
Yeah.
watch TV?
24 hours, I was definitively better.
Were you watching TV prior to that or just...
I didn't watch a lot of TV. I'll be honest with you. It was more, I slept a lot. I rested a lot.
If you didn't watch TV, you were sick.
I was focused on getting out of my bed because what I knew, if I would get up and move around, and they kept telling me, when you feel like it, you need to get up. You've been on your back
Yeah.
for a week.
That's what kills a lot of them.
And they would actually tell me, sleep as many hours as you can on your stomach. There's a study that was coming out of New York that even on ventilators, people unconscious, they were rolling them over onto their stomach to have them sleep on their stomach. For some reason, that helps you clear your lungs out. And so I would sleep as many hours as I could on my stomach. It's hard. I had IVs in both arms and caths and heart monitors. And so just getting up to go to the bathroom was a chore. But I knew if I could get up and and it was probably Tuesday, a local nurse, she said, Mr. Brooks, I'm going to get you a recliner. If I get you a recliner, will you get out of bed and spend at least eat your 3 meals a day in the recliner? I said, absolutely. So they bring in a recliner. The first thing I did is that when I got out on Friday, I said, make sure that my buddy in 108 gets my recliner. it helped me enormously. I was sitting up, I was functioning, eating my meals.
Blood was circulating.
Blood was circulating. Last 24 hours, I spent more hours in the chair than I did in the bed. You get to where you don't want to be in a bed.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get back in that bed again. They had my IVs, my arms kept failing, so they put in what they call a mid PICC line,
Yeah.
which goes straight to your heart. And so I had reduced the number of cords hanging off me. And I was sweating so badly. At one point, my body temperature was so high that the gummy glue on my heart pads melted. And I had a nurse tell me, in all the years of her nursing, she had never seen someone who melted the glue off of the pads. That's how enormously hot my body temperature was. So when I go to work every day and they check my temperature, I go to City Hall, check your temperature. I giggle because I'm like, there ain't no temperature. You hadn't seen temperature until you saw what I had.
Yeah, if you had the temperature you had, you wouldn't be going to the meeting.
Yeah, I'm like, buddy, you can check it all day long. It doesn't bother me a bit.
So how long were you in ICU?
6 days. Yeah, 5 in the regular room, 6 in ICU, 11 total, and it was a miracle. The remdesivir, the donor plasma, and the steroids. I didn't have a step down room. I left from ICU, which is also a miracle.
Yeah, that's odd.
I was feeling that good. I said, I'm ready.
How'd they know you weren't contagious after that?
Remember, I had gotten my positive on the Saturday, July 4th. My happy 4th of July was positive
You'll
COVID.
remember that.
That was my fireworks. And once you have no fever for 5 to 6 days, and you have literally the day they started giving me remdesivir and the donor plasma, my fevers broke. I was fever free. And so fever free, my strength was coming back. I wasn't flat on my back. They tested me again. All signs were pointing to my recovery. But they were pretty stern with me. Quarantine yourself for 14 days. Go nowhere.
No problem, right? Just recovering anyway.
And I was like, not a problem. And then my pulmonologist told me, you've got a serious lung injury. You're going to be 4 to 6 weeks before you feel normal. And even then, you might not feel great. So Kim and I would do a lot of walks around the neighborhood and walking the dog. We have a 72-pound golden doodle that you got to walk every day. Right. And so you feel, there were some days that I would just feel great. And I'd take one walk around the neighborhood, man, and I got to go sit down. And it's just your body trying to get itself back to normal.
Would you think you're normal now?
I really do. I tell people, I have lots of friends that ask lots of questions about COVID and how do you feel, and I still have residual problems. I'm very grateful that when I was released from the hospital that I don't have any residual, I never lost my sense of taste. I had 11 days of hospital food. I never lost my sense of smell. And there were a couple of days without a shower. I wish I had lost my sense of smell, but I didn't. And
people have different.
Very different.
Very different. Tom said he had a headache he said Sandra lost her sense of smell and taste, and she had a headache. And other than that,
and as did my daughter. My daughter, who's the nurse at Nashville.
Did she have COVID too? Did she have it prior to you?
She had it prior to me. We hadn't been in contact with each other, so she believes she got hers at a restaurant in Nashville.
But how was hers? How was hers?
She never got to the hospital. Spent quite a few days in bed, quite a few days feeling badly, flu, achy. Same hit by a truck feeling that I had, sore throat, but was never hospitalized. Her big problem was Vanderbilt Hospital required 2 consecutive negative tests to go back to work. And she would, as you have heard reported, it's very true. You can test negative for COVID today and test positive the very next day.
Yeah.
And so she was having trouble getting 2 consecutive negatives, finally was able to do so. But she was out of work. She was sick for 2 weeks and then out of work, recovery for 2 weeks.
Why does she live out in Nashville rather than here?
Vanderbilt. She's a nurse at Vanderbilt, and I'm incredibly proud of her. She identified that was the only hospital that she applied for. I did not know that.
As a nurse?
As a nurse. So she graduated from here at Lee School of Nursing, and I was still a state representative and was in committee. You're live on television. And just like you, I'm reading this paper, and I look up, and I see my daughter in the back of the chamber. And I said, we're going to have a recess. So
Yeah.
My daughter just arrived. And so we have a little recess, and I go back and see my daughter, and she was there for an interview that I didn't know she was coming
Wonder
for.
what her attraction to Vanderbilt was.
The very best. She said, I want to work at the very best training hospital in the state of Tennessee.
To be a nurse.
To be a nurse, and she's now been promoted to charge nurse, and I'm incredibly proud of her. She picked senior care. She picked acute care of the elderly when she was in school, and that's her passion.
So she specialized.
She does, and so now that I'm 53 and getting older, I'm thankful that my daughter wants to take care of the elderly, and she's great at it. She's just her spirit. She treats every single patient like her.
I bet she does pretty well.
I'm very
I mean,
proud of
that's
her.
different than being
Yeah. I'm very proud of
a.
her.
Yeah. How old is she?
She's 24, and so she's doing very, very well.
My boy is 20.
Oh, wonderful.
He's going to Lee now. He just started a few weeks ago.
My son just got a new job, IT, and so I'm very proud of him. He's smarter than his dad. So
Where's that at?
Right here, just down the road in what I call the Capstar building. His company is that he works for is Keystone Solutions, and they do all the IT and computers. And if you think about where the future of our world is going,
Oh, it's there. Yeah.
it's right there in that world.
Which president was it? They asked his mother, "Are you proud of your son, the president?" And she said, "Yeah, and I've got one that's plowing a field that I'm proud of too." Or what was that story?
But it's a great story. It's
I
fantastic.
can't remember which one that was, but in other words, it didn't matter what they did. She's proud of both of them.
And we just dedicated Paul Kahn Parkway last week, and famously the Kahns had 12 children, and Coach Hughes, I still call him Coach Dale Hughes, Councilman Hughes, I should say.
Those are his glasses.
Yeah, Councilman Hughes.
He was in here last week, and he left it. I hadn't even told him.
How funny. Those are
They're
expensive.
bent.
That means they're expensive then.
Yeah.
But he was giving the history when they dedicated the road, and he said,
Do I look like Dale?
they are bent. That's so funny. He said that someone asked Mrs. Kahn, of the 12 children, which is your favorite? And she very wisely and slowly responded and said, thank you for asking. And whichever child at that moment needs me the most is my favorite. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, very good.
I'm incredibly proud of both of my children, and I'm incredibly proud that they've done better and gone farther in their education than their dad did. And incredibly proud that they're both wonderfully independent like their mother. And when I met Kim in high school,
We're at in high school.
Marietta.
So you're from Marietta.
Originally, Kim and I are from Marietta, Georgia.
You're both from Marietta.
Her entire family and my entire family are all in Georgia.
Marietta, Georgia.
We're the only Tennesseans.
South of Atlanta.
South of Atlanta. Actually, north of Atlanta, North Cobb County, and so we met in high school, and independent, fiercely independent.
So y'all went to the same high school in Marietta.
We did, and I met her in high school.
Are y'all about the same age?
I was a senior and she was a junior, and she was captain of the cheerleading squad, and just
She looks like a cheerleader.
stunningly beautiful then, and still
Yeah.
she's actually more beautiful now than she was then, and but I've realized that fierce independence is such a wonderful trait.
You're born with that or not.
You're either born with it or you're not.
Can't teach it,
And-
can't take it away.
Remember what I said about how my regret of being gone for 12 years, I knew Kim and the kids were going to be okay. I knew that no matter where I was, or if something ever, God forbid, happened to me crossing the mountain every week for 12 years, twice a week, she would be okay and would take care of the kids because of that incredible sort of Midwestern pioneer spirit of hers. And so that's still something that I marvel at, and it's been passed down to my children, and I see it in both of them.
Were so y'all were high school sweethearts, I guess.
I was much more high school sweetheart than she was. I fell in love with her at first sight, and it took her a while to agree.
Yeah.
And then we dated off and on throughout my entire time here at Lee.
So you went to...
I came to Lee, and she went to a school called Toccoa Falls College. You know Toccoa, Georgia? North Georgia?
Toccoa.
It's where the dam break. You built a dam in '77.
I built a dam. Yeah.
They had a dam break, and a bunch of people were killed,
What's
unfortunately.
next to?
It's down next to Cleveland, Georgia, which is where Cabbage Patch Kids were born, and Helen, Georgia.
You know, I've got a story. I went to Nashville when I was about 17, and I was coming back, and I got lost. You know, I'm 17.
Sure.
I ended up in Atlanta.
Wow. You
And
missed the.
I
you went
missed it.
75
I missed it. Crazy.
It's
I mean, you know,
wonderful,
I was 17 or 16, and I ended up coming back, and I saw the sign Cleveland, and I ended up in Cleveland,
Georgia.
Georgia.
I know exactly where you are.
And you know how hard it is to get from Cleveland, Georgia.
You can't get there from here.
You can't get there. Well,
Up through LJ and
well,
Blue
I
Ridge.
did that.
Yeah.
I got home about
Chatsworth.
2 in the morning.
I was going to say 411.
Nobody was the wiser.
On 411.
I got a speeding ticket
Ooh.
in White County, Georgia.
Wow.
Somewhere.
I know White County. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, so you ended up coming to Lee.
I did. I came to Lee in '86, the same year Paul Kahn became president. We were freshmen together. He was
So you went somewhere to your college.
Well, I didn't. I went to Kennesaw State College for a year, maybe 2 quarters. It's funny. I always wanted to come to Lee. All my friends came to Lee. My pastor came
Now,
to Lee.
why is that Marietta, Georgia attracts?
My pastor at Mount Perrin Church of God, the Lee denomination, his son was sort of a basketball star.
Wow.
Paul Dana Walker, they named the gym after him when he was killed. That's just what you did. When you grew up in Marietta, Georgia, and you're a Church of God, you came to Lee. It's just your school.
So it was the church denomination.
It was the church denomination and all my friends and their friends. But my father, unfortunately, had a bad stroke of luck and declared bankruptcy my senior year of high school. Lost the house.
Was
lost
that
his job.
devastating?
Devastating. And so when people in the campaign would accuse me of, you don't understand blue collar, you don't understand, I would just look at him and say, then you don't understand me. So my dad lost everything. People came and took the house, took the cars. I understand what it's like to be repossessed. And as a matter of fact, I couldn't afford Lee, and a benefactor in my church anonymously paid for my school.
You don't know who it is?
I do now, after he died. I was asked to be a pallbearer at his funeral, and it was revealed to me who the...
You had no idea?
No.
Would you kind of think it might be him?
No, I really didn't. Because he wasn't an ostentatiously wealthy man. He was a chaplain. He was just a normal guy who knew that God told him, this young man needs to come to Lee and doesn't have the money.
Well, it's an incredible story in itself.
It's very rare that a lot of people don't know it.
How big was the church?
About 1,000 people at that time. About 1,000 people. And he was an elder, knew my mom and dad, knew my dad had lost his job and gave my dad a job and then gave me a job. So my father and I got to work together that last year that I was in Marietta. And I would tell people, you know, there's a story, or Abraham, speak that which is not as though it is, meaning if you speak your faith, it will come to pass. Speak that which is not in existence, and it will come into existence. And so I would just, people would say, hey, where do you go to school? I go to Kennesaw State, but I'm going to go to Lee. I would just speak it instantaneously. No one taught me that. I would just speak it.
Was you figuring at the time you couldn't afford to leave?
Oh, there's no doubt. My father, I guess I was, 17, 18 years old, senior in high school. I'd never seen my dad cry. My father was not an emotional man. His father was not an emotional man. I'd never seen my father cry, even at a funeral, until the day he sat me down and said, I can't afford to send you to Lee College. And he wept.
And I can understand that now, as being a
father.
father. I mean, I couldn't.
And
he really meant he could not, because if there was any way.
And I was like, Dad, it's okay. I remember trying to console my dad. Dad, it's okay. I got this. It's okay. And so I went and registered at Kennesaw State, took 2 quarters.
What were you figuring? You were not going to come to Lee, or you was just going to go another route and get to
Well,
Lee?
I knew instinctively I'm getting a college degree. You know, whatever it takes, I'm going to get a college degree. My father had not gotten a college degree. My mother had not gotten a college degree. I was the first one to get a college degree, and it started out at Kennesaw. And again, every time people saw me, hey, where are you going to school? What are you going to do? That's what you do when you're a senior. You get asked where you're going to school. Well, I'm signed up. I'm registered for Kennesaw State College, but
That'd be like Cleveland State.
Cleveland State, it was identical
Yeah, yeah.
at that time. 2-year college, and I said, I'm going to go to Cleveland State, or Chattanooga State, Kennesaw State, but I'm going to go to Lee. I'm going to make it to Lee. This guy heard about that testimony, anonymously paid for it. I got a call, very private family story, because my dad had declared bankruptcy. Do you remember these vacation clubs that you could be a part of years
I remember
ago?
that, yeah.
So my mom and dad had bought a week of a condo in Destin.
Yeah.
And I remember it was back in the 80s because Seaside hadn't been built yet, and they were actually protesting. I remember the environmentalist EPA people were protesting.
That was when,
They didn't want to destroy the sand dunes and overdevelopment. Boy, if we had bought that land then, how much it would be worth.
Yeah, right.
You and I wouldn't be working
we
right
wouldn't
now.
be working.
But we got the call. Lee had already started. Registration was already in process.
So it was like right now.
The lady said to me, she still lives in Cleveland. I still give her credit every time I see her for getting me here. She said, if you can get in your car and you can drive to Cleveland right now, don't, because I said, I don't have the money to pay for it. Don't worry about it. It's being taken care of. Get in your car and drive right now.
Now, how much was that college then? Was it more than it is now? Because if I remember correctly, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for scholarships like there was.
I want to say it was $5,000 or $6,000 a semester.
And
so
that's about what it is now.
10 grand or 12 grand a year. And I remember telling her, her name is Viva Rose. She still lives in Cleveland. Still works at the Church of God headquarters. And she worked for Paul at that time. And she said, if you can get here right now, you can come to Lee. And I said, but I don't have a job. I don't. She said, Kevin, I actually still don't know how she found me.
Where were you at?
We were at a rental beach house in Destin, Florida.
And you had you had 2 years under your belt.
2 quarters or 2 semesters. I think they were on the quarter system at Cleveland.
So you were getting ready to go back to Kennesaw?
I was getting ready to go back.
For your second year.
And she said, if you can get here right now, you're in. And I got in my car. But I remember talking to Mom and Dad. That was like mid-afternoon, late afternoon at dinner. And my mom and dad lovingly said, you know, this is the last family vacation we're ever going to have. We paid for this before your dad declared bankruptcy. Yeah. And we may never get another vacation again, ever. And we paid for the whole week. Mm-hmm. So we love you, son. And if this is what you want to do and you believe this is... Now you have a son. Mm-hmm. If he said, Dad, Lee College just called and said, if I show up, it's paid for.
Yeah. Here's your keys.
You would say, are you sure?
Yeah, I'd say.
And so my parents said, if this is what you think you want to do and you think God's opening this door, we're not going to stand in your way, but we're staying here in Florida. So I packed my car, drove quickly to Marietta.
Yeah, because you had to get...
Packed up my room alone. My 76 280Z Datsun hatchback, crammed it full. Gwen knows what kind of car that is. Crammed it full to the hatch. I'm pushing the hatch down to try to...
By yourself?
By myself, crying. I'm leaving my home, which, by the way, I never returned to because my dad was repossessed.
That was very emotional, just that.
So I drove to Cleveland I drove to a town I'd never been to a school I had never seen in person with no idea how I was going to pay for it.
All because of that basketball guy.
And so I get in my car, I drive, I pull up in front of Medlin Hall, and they said...
what song's on the radio?
Oh man, it was Eagles. It was Eagles.
Which song?
Take It Easy. So I'm driving and come up Dalton Pike. So I still get emotional.
You're going to get a shortcut.
But yeah, they told me. They said take Dalton Pike.
Yeah.
Shortcut.
Yeah.
And I still get emotional because when you come up over APD 40 and you're coming into Cleveland down by Spring Creek, you could see what then was Bradley Memorial Hospital.
Bradley Memorial,
where my son was born. So I still get emotional thinking about that, where my life was saved from COVID. So when I come over that hill,
and the first thing you saw when you came to Cleveland?
Bradley Memorial. So when I come over that hill to this day, I still get a twinge because so much has happened in what I can see. For a season, Kim and I sold our house and quickly had to find a place to go, and Sandra Rowland got us one of those.
That's right, yeah. So
condos.
now you really live there.
And I would look out my window and see it every morning. That's where the season of my let's not be in Nashville, let's run for mayor. I'd wake up every morning and look out the blinds, and there was Bradley Memorial, the same vision that I had 34 years ago.
But hang on, you're coming over the hill and you see Bradley Memorial.
Yeah. And I just.
Is it of a morning or of an evening?
It was very late in the evening. I drove home from Florida, packed everything I could in a Datsun 280Z hatchback, and drove that night. So I got home from Florida in the morning, packed all day, and drove that same night, not really knowing where I was going to sleep that night.
Now that was like a 15-hour
drive,
well,
yeah,
maybe?
I mean, if you count the 8 to 10
Yeah.
from Florida, stop, pack, throw stuff in boxes and suitcases, anything I could find. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, so I'm a teenage kid.
Yeah.
I packed the worst stuff.
Yeah.
I packed like tube socks and candy.
And looking back, it was the last time you were going to be in that house.
100%. Because my parents at some point at Lee sent me a map and a key to the new rental house and had to explain to me over the phone that the bank took the other one. And I remember being mad that my stuff, where's my stuff?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was a very interesting and difficult season, but at the same time.
And you're how old?
Oh, I was 18. You know.
No, you're
20. Well, 18, 19. Yeah, I could have been approaching
19,
20. So I'm. Fast forward, I'm 53, and when I was in the alumni office, my dear friend and wonderful professor Kathy Simmons and I shared an office, and we would talk about changes. We were having to do some changes in the alumni world, and she did this great research on the word change. You and I, Americans, English, we have one word for change. If you look at the word change in Chinese, it's two symbols. There's two words, and those two symbols are opportunity on dangerous winds, are the two ways that the Chinese draw that word for change. And what the Chinese, thousands of years older than our culture, believe is that although change is hard, dangerous winds, bumpy, turbulent, it also is opportunity. So as difficult as that season of change was in my life, it did change my life. I came to Cleveland, fell in love with Cleveland, was given the opportunity of working for some of the greatest minds the world has ever known.
But now wait a minute, where'd you stay that night?
So they got me a room in Medlin Hall in the basement, room 104. I remember it to this day.
Who's they?
The people in charge of dorm rooms.
So you just, I'm here,
Yeah,
where do
I'm here.
I go?
Where do I go and what do I do? The next morning, I show up, again, no money, no books, no cash. My dad didn't say, here's some cash
Yeah.
for whatever you need. He
Yeah.
didn't have it.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to get you a job. Go to the work study office and tell them what you're good at. Well, it didn't matter what I was good at.
Yeah.
I was at the end of registration. They have registration for 12 days. I registered on the day of 12. All the work study jobs were gone.
Mm-hmm.
The only job they had was pruning shrubs for the maintenance crew, and my boss was Roy Sherlin, one of the greatest men I ever got a chance to work for. Incredible work ethic. taught me so much. So here's a kid from Marietta, Georgia, who had lots of suits and dress clothes, who was trying to figure out what my role in life is. And
Your dad's having trouble.
I'm pruning shrubs at the science building. That was my very first job. People think my first job was for the president. My first job was pruning shrubs with a hedge clipper. And Roy said, "You ever pruned shrubs before?" And I said, "Wait, yeah, sorta." He goes, "Well, you're gonna learn." And I was so proud. The joke is, in my family, I did so great they tore the building down because it's gone now. But I would stand on Ocoee Street. So think about what my job is right now, being the mayor of this town. I would stand on Ocoee Street. There's a Lee College historic sign that talks about the 19-something World's Fair or something about Lee College. It's really old. It's kind of rusted. I bet people don't even know it's there.
I don't even know it's there.
If you're on Centenary, it's almost right in front of you, looking at the Lee Administration Building. Look for it the next time you drive down Ocoee Street. I would stand at that sign and look back at the science building and see my work. And you could see, if you get that far back, if you had gotten them, this was before the, this was by hand. And I would, I missed that spot. I would stand there. My dorm was across the street, Medlin, so I would come out of my dorm, and first thing a lot of people do would look for traffic.
That's before they had those lights.
Long before they had the lights. I was there when, unfortunately, kids got hit.
Yeah.
And so I would come out of my dorm room, the side door of Medlin Hall. I have a unique experience. I lived on all 4 floors of Medlin Hall because I was there for 4 years. I moved up every year.
Is that you sign up for it? Why do they want to be on top?
Well, only seniors got to be on top, and it's a private room up in the dormers. They're little dormer-shaped rooms, and they were private.
Neater, I guess.
Neater, and you don't have to listen to somebody else snore.
Yeah.
And it was your room, your
Nobody
stuff.
above you.
Nobody above you. You were top of the heap.
How much did you have to work when you were there?
I had 3 jobs. I worked.
when you were there pruning.
Lots. I mean, they had, I want to say, 15-hour a week, was the schedule, but I would work, 30 or 40.
Because you had to study too.
Had to study, so I would work. I'd work for the maintenance crew, and then I would work for. They found out that I had actual computer, which in the 80s, this was early computers. I'd actually been trained in Marietta, the guy who paid for my college at the end of my story. I didn't know it at the time. He had a computer company. Gave my dad a job, gave me a job. I was in charge of inventory. So I'd gotten pretty good at these new IBM, new computers. So when someone found out that I had computer experience, Tim Todd became my first boss outside of Lee. T&D Christian Book Sales. His wife is Marie Todd. She was the school teacher for both of my kids.
Yeah.
But Tim Todd had that old T&D Christian Book Sales. It's now an antique store on Candy's Lane.
Candy's Lane, yeah.
So I would sit there at night, maintenance during the day, school in the afternoon. At night, I would go, and he would have mail order catalogs for all these Christian books. And if you had returned to sender and had an address change, they would rip off the bottom of that magazine cover and send them back to Tim Todd. So there were stacks of magazine covers ripped and rubber banded together, and all night long we would just sit there and update.
When did you study?
As best I could between jobs. I got a job at Perkins Yogurt. I'm one of the Perkins original employees.
One of the first ones?
Yeah, and then in my senior year, I was graduating my senior year, married Kim at Christmas. Kim came back.
Now let's back up. How did you connect with her?
We had dated off and on since high school. So 85 is when I met her.
Did she know you was in Florida and coming back and going to Marietta?
Yeah. And we'd connected off and on throughout the years, stayed connected, we called our engagement phase 3. We would date, break up, date, break up. Engagement was phase 3. That was in 89, and got married.
So you moved her up here?
I did. against her father's best wishes. He did not want his baby girl leaving Georgia. As a matter of fact, to this day, we're still the only people that have ever left Georgia.
Till they found out about. Now we know why you got rid of that.
So
Income state tax,
yeah.
right?
And so I'm trying to convince.
all-
I'm trying to convince him to come up here. I'm like, what else can I do
Yeah.
to get you guys
Yeah.
to move up here? So it's now you can come here, and it's the cheapest place to die in the whole nation. But yeah, it's a very interesting story how God. I think of it as a quilt. That how God sort of weaved all this together and brought these threads together. My grandmother would macrame. Do you remember what macrame is? And I remember all those yarns coming together. And
I read a book one time where the guy says that his life, while he was in it, was just one big chaos. But looking back, it looked like a well-written book.
it's a great statement. Yeah, it's a great statement.
Because things are falling into place more than we realize
Yeah.
they are.
And I would paraphrase that to say, I don't think anything's an accident. I think God sort of orders our steps. And I was at the school where I met my wife because my school closed down, and I was forced to go to Kennesaw State because my dad's company closed down, and it put me in a position to have a job where a guy saw something in me where he said, I'm going to pay for that kid's school.
Yeah, what are the odds?
I'm not going to tell him. But
You
I'm
could
gonna-
have just gone to church with him. You were one of 1,000. Your
looking-
dad did get you to college.
Technically, he did.
Think about that.
Yeah, technically, the steps of a righteous man are ordered, is what the Bible says, and you're right. So I need to give my dad the honor and the glory that he deserves for keeping our family together. Because you're
Well, he might have gone to work for the guy, done a bad job, they not hired you, and it wouldn't have mattered.
that's true, very true. It's and then Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. The people heard that I was working at Tim Todd's computer company, found out that I knew computers, gave me a job in Dale Goff's Institutional Advancement was the name of the department, IA, alumni, giving,
Yeah.
so I sat there and did all the computer stuff and no longer had to work for Roy Sherlin and pruning shrubs. I got promoted.
Yeah.
And then we had, do you remember, ironically, we said Candy's Lane. Do you remember the hayride accident on Candy's Lane when Lee College kids got injured in the hayride accident?
I don't remember that one.
That was in '88, and Dr. Khan's office needed somebody to be the ambassador to these families. And
Boy, that's
I was handpicked by the
God.
president's office and did a good job, they felt, and offered me a full-time job as a student worker in the president's office. So it took me a long time. I was Joseph in the pit long before I was in the president's office. And it wasn't until after I graduated that Dr. Khan offered me a full-time job, which again changed the trajectory of my family's life, keeping us in Cleveland, keeping us here at Lee.
so little did you know, coming over that hill and seeing Bradley Memorial Hospital, that it would be something you'd be watching the whole time, and you would, even though you'd never left your home, you never went back to your home in Marietta, you would never leave this place you're coming over the hill
Sure.
to.
And it really did. And again, as corny as it sounds, I will find a reason to circumvent, to force myself to come down APD 40 just to see that. And it reminds me, it's this, I don't know if you and your family or you have ever heard about Kim's mom, a wonderful Southern and incredibly godly. At the point which I met the Sanders family, she was, to me, the most godly person I'd ever met. I would not kiss Kim. First 5 dates, no kissing, because I was terrified God would tell her mother. I said, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And Kim's mom would say, something marked you. Well, that marked you. Don't say that, it'll mark them. Coming over that view and coming over that ridge and looking down and seeing Cleveland and seeing Bradley Memorial marked me. And it's a visual image that was burned into me that to this day I still, and I remember when Kim and I sold the house, and she was, do you think, are you going to like living in this condo? Is this what you, and I said, honey, look at what I'm looking at. That's the view I saw 30 years ago when I first came to this town.
And it doesn't even know you're looking at it that
Doesn't.
way.
And I said, and God gave me this chance, just briefly, to live in that condo, and every night the lights of Cleveland would be illuminated and I could see it. And every morning at sunrise, the sun would come up and I would look out and I would see it. And I would say, that's it, Kim, that's it, and you can't put that into words. You really can't even encapsulate what it is to see something that in a very young and impressionable part of your life was such an important landmark. So here we are. And now I get to be entrusted, which is the way I think about it, as the mayor of this town. And I have friends from Cleveland, from my Lee days. Well, I'm not surprised. I never doubted it. You were a politician in school.
You have completely explained why you would drop down from what I said. In your mind, it was a step up.
I was coming home. It was my homecoming reunion, to which privately in our family we celebrated. We never one time thought step down. We consistently said and continue to say, step up, that Kevin gets to come home. I get to be home in my bed every night. I get to be with my kids. I get to see every day, and it's so very personal to me. I drive down 17th Street and I worry about the ripples in the pavement. I drive down Ocoee Street and I worry about that sign that I used to look at. Mm-hmm. I drive down Keith Street and I worry about the grass along the greenway. It's a very visceral, very personal, because I remember what Cleveland looked like when I came over that hill. And as strange and Kennedy Camelot sounding, some kind of a mystical thing in my head, I just constantly say, we're going to make Cleveland even greater. Greater days even lie ahead. As great as Tom Rowland was able to bring it, the Jetport and the Exit 20 and all the things, Whirlpool and Wacker and Amazon, best is yet to come.
And Red Clay before he was even mayor.
Red Clay before he was even mayor.
How do you top that? He's a hard act to follow.
But I don't. I mean, there's just no way. I came to that conclusion incredibly early in this journey, that you can't replace Tom, which is why, in fact, my very first piece of paper I signed, like the one for your grandmother, was giving Tom the title of Mayor Emeritus. That was my number one act as mayor, to show I'm not going to try to do better than Tom. Tom is the top longest serving mayor in Cleveland, longest serving mayor in the state of Tennessee. You're not going to top that.
I always tell him he's the best money can buy.
So all $12,000 of it. So what do? You find other ways to excel. You make the Greenway the greatest in our state. You recruit. I have 3 restaurants right now. You're in the development business. I have 3 restaurants right now that are asking me often, did you find me a spot? Did you find me a place? So I'm working with the chamber. I'm working with city officials. I personally act like I was asked in the 80s to be an ambassador for the city. And, I'm out in the road the other day doing this because I felt like the people were driving too fast.
I've known you and I voted for you and everything, but I had no idea that you were this passionate about it.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I knew you cared, but not to this extent.
And people ask me, thank you, Dee. People ask me, why do you care? Why? And I say, in 1986, when I drove over that hill for the first time, I knew I was home. I left my home, and that's a strange feeling. When you leave your home and everything you love, and maybe that's it. Maybe because nobody came with me, I had no friends and no family and no faith and no anything here. I had nothing in Cleveland. I left all that behind. And I remember the radio, you asked what song was playing.
Yeah.
Man, I was on Dalton Pike. I had both my windows down, back in the day, the way you used to drive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A good 65, 70 mile an hour.
Both my windows down, and the
Eagles
wind was
playing.
blowing, and take it easy.
Yeah.
I was just, and I realized I have nothing to go back to. This is my home. And
You didn't know it, but you didn't have nothing to go back to.
That was not a euphemism. Literally and figuratively, I had nothing to go back to.
I think when a boy is in his 20s, 19, 20, he somehow or another feels this huge pressure not to be a problem for his dad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%, yeah.
And
yeah, I just did the math. I was born in 67, that was 86, so I was 19.
so you were subconsciously, your dad didn't need any more pressure.
No, there's no doubt.
And so you had it double.
Yeah, we felt so bad for my dad, who had always had, you and my dad would be fast friends, entrepreneurial, had a table like this in our basement, and started 3 companies from it. I remember my mom was going through some stuff, getting rid of it, like throwing it away. And in one of the boxes I saw my dad's leather embossed phone in a box. And this is pure 80s.
Yeah.
It was a box with leather on top,
Yeah.
and you open it up and there was a phone in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta have that. It sat on my dad's desk. Every memory I ever have of my dad's desk was that box phone. His brother worked for Bell South, Ma Bell back in the day, and somehow got him this cool phone that I thought was just the coolest phone ever.
What's he doing now? Is he still alive?
Yeah, still alive, and his actual love, when he and my mother met, they were both with the airlines. My dad was with Eastern, my mom was with TWA. He has always loved airplanes, dabbled in a plane, used to have a small Cessna that he and some businessmen owned in a partnership, so I grew up flying around with my dad, and all of that was gone, all that was lost. The love of planes never left him, so he's back in the aviation industry, and there's a very prominent businessman in Georgia and Atlanta, Peachtree DeKalb Airport, has 3 jets, and he's in the check cashing business, much like the company here in Cleveland.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's his competitor in Georgia, and we joke about that. But my dad's in charge of those jets. He's the director of operations for his planes, and loves them. And I'm all the time saying, Dad, would you fly to Chattanooga and pick me up? Next time you come in, fly in.
No chance they'll move to Cleveland also, right?
No, my mom and dad have their retirement home now, and they love it and love being in Atlanta. Again, both my sisters are there, all of his living brothers and sisters, Kim's 3 generations.
Did their families know each other prior?
No, they did not. It's interesting, Kim's dad, I told you how closely I'm drawn to Bradley Hospital. Kim's dad, when Kim was pregnant with Zachary, it was 91, and he was like, hey, son, I want to talk to you about something. Why don't you think about driving down here to Kennestone? 3 generations of our family. If Zach's born here, we'll have 3 generations of our family, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, Dad, I love you, but my son will be born in Bradley Memorial Hospital. That's my home, and that's, again, coming over that mountain and seeing that hospital. I said, that's just us, and that's where, so I'm thrilled by that heritage that we have. And then, of course, you fast forward 30 years, I never would have thought I would have been in that hospital. I never would have thought that hospital would be again.
Did you think to yourself, am I going to die in this place?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happened to me. On Sunday, before I went to ICU, I looked out the window and saw Jesus in the clouds. I mean, I had the whole experience, soup to nuts. I actually...
Might have been the fever, whatever, right?
No, I did. I actually prayed, God, if you're not going to heal me, just take me home. I'm ready. I can't hurt anymore. I can't breathe. The pain had not stopped for 5 days.
That's a long time.
I was begging them for more medicine. And the nurse was a male nurse named
Was
Michael.
it getting worse or just the same?
No, worse. And And he said, Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry, I can't give you anything else. You have had the maximum, and it just, every part of my body, it hurt to touch. The weight of the sheet hurt. My chest hurt, my head hurt. I mean, it was just full body headache, pain, just horrible. And I remember looking out the window. I don't know about your faith. I talked to God.
I do too.
And I looked out the window. I said, God, why have you forsaken me? I'm not like I'm trying to be Jesus. Why? Oh God, why? It was just very personal. God, what have I done to you that you've allowed me to be this sick and you've left me? And Dee, as sure as I'm looking at you right now, the clouds moved and there was the face of God or Jesus or whoever you want that face to be. I'm telling you, I looked up there and saw it again. I may have had 104 fever, but in my spirit, I saw the clouds move and they formed a face. And I still get chills. If my arms were showing, you could see the hair on my arm still stands up. And God clearly spoke to me and said, I didn't leave you. I'm carrying you. I'm the one that's keeping you where you are. You would be dead if it weren't for me. And I began to cry. I began to apologize. God, forgive me for doubting you. Please heal me. And that was evening-ish.
On the fifth day.
On the Sunday that they moved me to ICU.
Oh, yeah.
That was evening-ish.
Yeah.
And Kim, I really wasn't eating. I really wasn't able to eat or digest or enjoy anything. But early in the week, she had brought up to me, remember your family can't come up there. So she drops it off at ER, a really tart mixed berry smoothie king. And that was from each day, my delight or highlight of the day was that smoothie king.
Why that?
It was incredibly tart, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want anything sweet.
Wonder why tart?
I don't know. I just wanted something tart.
Like a sweet tart.
Like a sweet tart. And so she brought me this berry smoothie every day.
Why did she know to get that?
Well, I had said, hey, can you want anything? I'm out. I'd love a Smoothie King. What flavor do you want? I said, I just want something that really tart, really. And it literally became my daily highlight of my day. And remember what I said earlier, I had been in and out, sometimes sleeping 20 hours. I kind of had that come to Jesus meeting there and saw Jesus in the clouds and thought I was dying and prayed to die, prayed, God, if you're not going to heal me, just take me home. I don't want to, my wife and kids will be fine, and, I'm done. Kim had dropped off a smoothie, and it got lost. So I kind of had this vision between 4 and 6, and around 7, I texted her and said, hey, where's that smoothie? Did you ever drop off that smoothie? No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
She's like, honey, I dropped it off at 2. What are you talking about? And I said, I never got it. And so Kim started calling the nurse's station that, it's not here, it's not there. There's a system. You drop it off at the ER and they transfer it to this and then they get it to this. And so Kim made the call. If you guys can't deliver a smoothie, how in the world can you save my husband's life?
Yeah.
If you can't, and so if my wife was here at this chair, she would say a $5 smoothie saved my husband's life. Because it was that call that the administrators of the hospital started saying, he's a lot sicker than we thought he was. Look at this chart. And then somebody else called somebody else who was in charge, and somebody else called the other supervisor who was in charge. They ended up getting the hospitalist at 9 o'clock at night to come back from Ooltewah, where he lives, and by 9:30 I was in the ICU.
And 24 hours later, after them disappear, you were starting to ease up.
I really was. My fevers were starting to break, and my appetite was coming back, and able to partially get up. And I would actually.
Where did the smoothie go?
They apologized and just said that when the shift changed and when the guy
Somebody drank your smoothie.
no, they finally got it.
Oh,
to
they
me.
did?
Yeah, but it had been sitting in some chair, and they found it. And
I'd be afraid to drink it after
well,
that.
as sick as I was,
Yeah.
as sick as I was, there wasn't nothing wrong.
That reminds me of that joke where the guy says, they asked Mary Todd Lincoln, other than the shooting, how was the play?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Other than the COVID, where's the smoothie?
It was Kim would say right now if she were here, $5 smoothie saved my husband's
But
life.
what kind of blueberry?
Mixed berry.
Mixed berry. I'm gonna get one. Where's that at?
Smoothie King right there at Keith Street, right next to Townhouse Bake Shop.
Oh yeah, I've never been in there.
Delicious.
Yeah.
And another thing that people don't talk about is the psychological part of COVID. My daughter, thankfully, started asking people to send my dad videos to cheer him up. We talked about the whole isolation and how hard
Yeah.
it was, and one of the great videos that I got was the Smoothie King crew making my mixed berry, and TikTok, they kind of made a TikTok. And I tell people, I send messages all the time. And when I find out that I have a friend with COVID, or even a stranger, if I find out about it, I send them a message, because it was the messages of hope and encouragement. People are dying alone. People are sitting in nursing homes right now, alone, isolated. People are sitting in assisted livings, isolated. And isolation is killing people. Just like COVID is killing people. The psychological effects of this disease, I tell people, my wife dropped me off and did not know she was going to be unable to be with me for 11 days. Your family can't come visit you. Your pastor can't come visit you. You've been in the hospital. Chaplains usually just swing by, whether you go to their church or not.
Yeah.
They see you on some list.
Yeah.
Church of the Nazarene, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't
They
matter.
still stop by.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard you're not well.
Yeah.
Even the doctors and nurses who are risking their lives really don't want to be with you. You can see it in their eyes. If an IV becomes loose or has to be changed, or there's a little bit of spray, or there's some, you can see. I mean, they're risking they don't want to take it home to their kids and kill their family members, their loved ones. People are dying in the ICU all around me. 4 people died the week I was in there. I'm getting the texts. I see the Facebook posts. I know what's going on. Psychologically, it is unbelievably hard. And I tell people equally hard as the physical is the mental. And that we really have to focus on getting messages of hope to people. It is survivable. You are going to come out of this. And I've had some friends who did, and I've had some friends who didn't. But I'm going to be sure to say, you got this. Because the people that sent me hope, there's a pastor from North Carolina. I was getting messages from all across around the country. Men I've worked for, companies I've worked for, pastors I've been friends with. And one guy from Charlotte, North Carolina, sent me a message, a video, which I still cherish. And he says, this is not an accident. He looked right in the camera and he pointed right at me on the phone. He said, this is not an accident that my wife just brought me a message that you're in the hospital, because I was reading in the book of Mark where Jesus was delayed to heal the daughter of Jairus. And the servant came up and said, don't trouble the master, she's already dead. And Jesus looked and said, what? That doesn't matter. We don't even have to be there. Jairus, if you believe your daughter will be healed, so shall she be healed. So shall it be, as it is written, so shall it be done. And Jairus says, I believe. And instantly the daughter awoke, and Jesus wasn't there, nor was Jairus. And the pastor said, just believe. And I sat up in my bed. I still feel that feeling. And said, I believe, God. I believe you can heal me. And then the real part of my testimony. And I'm not a singer. If you've ever heard me sing, you'll know I'm a singer. Not a singer. God told me the sacrifice of praise. As bad as you're hurting, as bad as you feel, as low as you are, if you'll praise me, I will heal you. The sacrifice of praise. And I remember thinking, that's nuts. And out of my deepest subconscious, a song I had not heard in I can't tell you how long began to play in my mind. It's your breath in my lungs, so I pour out my praise. I pour out my praise. I don't even know who sings that song. I found out later, and I reached out to them on Instagram. They both texted me back, I'm weeping when I heard your testimony. And it kept playing in my head and kept playing in my head. It's your breath in my lungs, so I pour out my praise. And it was dark. I remember very clearly. And I just said, Lord, it's your breath in my lungs. You put the original breath in my lungs. So I need your breath in my lungs right now. I can't take this anymore. My lungs aren't working. My breath is not deep enough. I need your breath in my lungs. And I began to sing that song. And as corny as this phrase is, as God is my witness, the beeping on the machine went up. And the oxygen count went up to the highest point. When I was first in the ER, it was in the 70s, like 78 or 79, which is very bad. Mm-hmm. Stayed in the 80s, got to barely 90 a couple of times. When I started singing that song, it was 94. Just like that. 95, 96, 97. Kept getting better and better and better. Yes, I give Remdesivir credit. Yes, I give the doctors credit. But I also have to thank the great physician for placing in my mind if I would praise him. Like Paul in prison. I didn't know it was going to be a church show today, do you? I'm sorry.
Everything's a...
But when I did that, no matter how bad my circumstances were, no matter how bad I was hurting, all the needles in my arms and beeping machines behind me, when I did that, when I was obedient, because I didn't want to, and I didn't feel like it, I'm kind of embarrassed that someone's going to hear me. All that's running through my brain, can they hear me? Can I, can
Am I on camera? Yeah.
And I started singing that song. It's your breath in my lungs. So I pour out my praise and started singing it. And it got easier, and it got easier, and I got louder, and I got louder. And I ended up just totally having a church service in my ICU room. The same hospital that I saw 34 years ago.
I think our ego gets us to where we think we're controlling what's going on anyway.
So much for me. As state representative, as mayor, I have to check my own spirit. And God has to remind me all the time that it's not me. And that's what politicians think. Politicians, mayors, dads, I'm going to fix this. Husbands, I can fix this. I'm going to fix this. And I realized, no, God, I need your help to fix this. Please, God, help me fix this. My state needs your help. My city needs your help. I need your help. In the hospital room, it was very clear. I was at the end of my ability to do anything for myself. People having to help me up to go to the bathroom. I'm done. Lowest point physically of my life.
And they didn't even want to be around you.
Clearly didn't want to be around me. And
did they make you wear a mask when you was...
Oh yeah. They had a mask and I had a mask. You can't breathe anyway, and so it was very much a point of God, you're in control. And it's funny. You think when you're in a position like I was in Nashville, or as mayor of a city, that you can control or fix or make things happen. But God channels the heart of the king, is what the Bible says. Promotion comes from the Lord. So yes, it's important to have systems, and yes, it's important to have council meetings, but it is very clear to me that God orders our steps and has me for such a time as this. I believe He let me get sick. People, that you talk about faith, craziness. If you're such a Christian, I've had people ask me this since I got sick. If you're such a big Christian, how come God let you get sick? Well, God has gotten so much glory, and His word has been proclaimed. Who would have ever thought? I giggled when they wouldn't let me donate plasma the first time I asked, because I didn't have my negative test paperwork. No, I'm sorry. I didn't have my positive test paperwork. And the lady at Blood Assurance said, yeah, we just have to have proof that you had COVID. I said, do you not watch 3, 9, or 12 or read any newspaper in the South? I said, I was getting calls from Knoxville. It was in the Knoxville paper. And she said, I know, Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry, but I got to have that piece of paper.
You couldn't hand her the newspaper.
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah,
I was like, do you have Twitter?
Yeah.
I can show you that I had it. And who would have ever thought? All 3 major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them would have been reporting Cleveland Mayor Kevin Brooks says God performed a miracle. When else in my life have I ever had an opportunity or a platform for every major newspaper to report God healed Mayor Kevin Brooks of Cleveland?
And you know, we go to church, you're talking about praising God. Is that not what we go to for, is to worship?
It really is.
But yet we put on these shows like we're trying to entertain everybody there, and it's not about the people there.
Well, you're dead right, Dee. We're supposed to be there to honor Him. We're supposed to go to church for Him, and we end up going to church to see how nice we look and see who else is there, and we start judging about who's there and who's not there, and
reserved parking or whatever.
You know, I kind of wonder if God hasn't used COVID to hit the reset button.
I almost believe there's a lot of community churches. I go to Benton Church of Christ, used to a lot, and there's 7 people there, maybe 8, maybe 10, maybe 3. And you know, I don't know, I just like it better.
Yeah.
It's too far to drive and all that stuff, but places like that can't make it without contributions and stuff. So are we doing away with the small churches? Is it got to be the mega churches that can't make it now either?
It's true.
It's almost a perfect crime.
You know, I think God is hitting the reset button because I think lots of us, including myself, forgot what we were supposed to go to church for.
You ever think about, we go to church and we hear about the Christians were worshiping in the hiding because the Romans would kill them, and we talk about how
the persecuted church.
But what's the difference between us not going to church because we might get COVID and not going to church because we might get persecuted? I'm not sure if I know the difference.
It's a great question. When I first became mayor pre-COVID, Kim and I decided to start visiting churches. We had been to the Churches of God. We knew what those were.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was important for us to go to the First Cumberland Presbyterian and First Baptist and
they're on the same team.
Westwood. You know, and that's what I found out. What I found out was we are all on the same team.
We're voting for the same guy.
I never called ahead. I never tried to set it up like it was an event. I would just show up. And sometimes people would, we're happy to see the mayor here this morning and First Lady. And I would always be thankful. I was also thankful when they didn't recognize me because I was just there for church.
Yeah.
I had a couple of pastors, oh, if I knew you were here, I said, hey, that's not why I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here just to be with our city and our citizens. I think it's important. And I sort of had one of these aha moments. I said, Kim, I think this is what heaven's going to be like. It's going to be all of us together. There's not going to be a Lutheran section and a Pentecostal section and a Church of Christ section. I said, we're all just going to be in heaven together. And I said, I kind of wish we started doing that now, that we had more. So I have gotten more involved with the Ministerial Association of Cleveland, which is all the churches and all the ministers that come together. Used to once a month. Now because of COVID, they do it Zoom call. But it's great. You see the Catholic priest with the collar, and you see our African American pastors and our
Church of
Church of
Christ with
Christ.
no music.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and guess what? They're all on this Zoom screen together, and I'm honored because they say, Mayor, what can we pray for you about? Right now, my consistent answer is unity, that our city comes together and is found with unity. And but I do think that's a lot about what heaven. When I look at that screen, I took a picture of it last time I told Kim, I said, that's what heaven's going to look like. I said, because there's no titles on those names, all different shape and size and color and creed and nation. That's that right there.
That believe slightly different.
But technically, we might have some different dialects. It's kind of like from the south and from the north.
Yeah.
We all speak English. We all speak Jesus.
We're all for the same God.
Some of them just say yuns and some say y'all.
Yeah. In the Muslims, they call they still worshiping God. They're just thinking about it a little different.
I got in trouble. I'm very grateful that the church allows me to travel before COVID hit around the world. And I got in trouble because I posted a picture in front of a Hindu temple, and someone put on my Facebook, you need to have those demons exorcised before you come back to Cleveland. And then another time I was invited to a mosque, not because they were honoring me as a representative who was also a Christian. Come see our place of worship. I've been to Jehovah's Witness. I've been to their synagogues. One was being dedicated in Atlanta. But Thailand, I was in front of this big Buddha. And what struck me was this thing is solid gold. And it's worth, I'm not sure you could put a worth on it, millions.
Yeah.
And people around it were, there's not anyone in Cleveland that was dressed so poorly, almost naked, almost nothing on, no possessions at all. And they were putting like beans, lentils is what you and I would call them, at the foot of this Buddha. And I asked the interpreter, what, are they begging for food? And they said, no, that's all they have, and they're giving it to their God. And I said, I'm 53 years old. I've never seen that in America. You hear about the widow's mite in the Bible, but I've never seen a person who physically was so poor they could not clothe themselves, and what little 2 or 3 beans they had in their possession, they put at the foot of this altar for what they believed was their God.
Which Buddhism is not really a religion, right?
It's a set of characteristics, of traits that you live
But they're
by.
worshiping Buddha.
Yeah. Well, I was in Indonesia. It was wonderful, but it is the most Muslim country in America and in the world. And so they would warn us, don't roll down your windows, don't stick your head out of the sunroof. You're a white American, you're a target, so be careful. We got out at church, and people started running. And, you and I don't run, you ride your bike, but we're not runners.
No.
And so I'm looking around like, why is everybody running? And I'm immediately, American, I thought, bomb, terrorist, something's wrong. And it wasn't like a brisk little jog. I mean, these were sprinting as fast as they could towards the church. And so I caught up with my interpreter, Tommy Smith, and I said, Tommy, what's going on? He goes, they're so excited to get to church that they're running as fast as they can, like breakneck speed, to get to their sanctuary.
To worship
Allah. No, to worship our God. This was a Christian church.
Mm.
And I said, I have never in any church I've ever seen people running as fast as their bodies could generate to get into church to worship God. And I said, boy, this has taught me a lot about my own faith and going home to America. This was a wealthy church. This was not a poor church. This was in the heart of Jakarta, Indonesia, a very, very affluent. They built a basketball arena. The government agreed, the Muslim government agreed, if you let us play basketball on the days, you can have church here on the weekends. And so they did.
So they're not totally against.
I mean, this one church has favor with the Muslim government, but there's constant, worry, constant concern about persecution.
There's nothing like an illness to make you more religious.
If you had asked me in June, hey, do you think you're going to get sick and be able to have this road to Damascus experience and come out of the hospital after 11 days and basically preach about it? I would have said, D, you're crazy. That's not me. That's not what I am.
All right, so now where do you go to church?
Kim and I are members of the Westmore Church of God.
The one right down here?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't Tasha play the piano?
No, they have the new campus on Candy's Lane.
Oh, yeah. The big one.
Yes.
Where Jim Sharp went.
That's exactly right.
Now, we were talking earlier about naming Paul Kahn, dedicating the road. What's Jim Sharp's connection to that?
So it's great you'd asked that. I just wrote a few paragraphs. Someone asked me to talk about Dr. Kahn's transformational leadership, closing of Church Street. I said, you can't tell that story without Jim Sharp. That was my first introduction to Jim Sharp. It was 1987. And so I'm a sophomore. Wise fool is what the word sophomore means. So I thought I was smart, but I really wasn't. And you would see Paul Kahn, you would see Jim Sharp on their golf carts on the campus, and I was working for Dale Goff at the time, the advancement office. And so you're constantly interacting with them. And just like your office here with these blueprints everywhere, you never saw Jim Sharp and Dr. Kahn without a set of blueprints under the arm, and they're kind of going everywhere. On the golf cart, trying to spread it out and look. And Jim would look and would stand at the front circle, the administration building on Ocoee Street, and he would point and he would say, now we're going to take this and it's going to curve and we're going to move this. And for 25, almost 30 years of my friendship with Jim Sharp, he continued to do that throughout his entire career. Would take me to what is now Mountain Point subdivision, and it was trees, and he said, we're going to put a road and this, and I would tell people it would be like Walt Disney standing in the swamps in Florida.
Did you eat with him at Jenkins a lot?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And
he was a good friend of mine, Jim.
I still, to this day, would not be the man I am or the father without his voice. He would invite me to the barn out by his lake, and those would be correctional conversations about.
I've been in those with him.
Yeah. And it was funny. You have a sign as you walk in your back door, leave by dark, or leave in the morning, it's got to be back by dark, or something like that.
Yeah.
Jim would always have that. I could borrow any tool, because I didn't have tools. You can borrow any tool you want in any of his barns, which were plentiful, but you had to have them back that night. Could not be out past sundown. And one day I just said, Jim, why do you insist? He goes, because they're my tools. I want to know where they are. And every morning he would wake up very early, 4:30 every morning. And he would, he could scan his walls and see what had not been returned. So I'd always tell Kim, I don't care if it's midnight, I'm taking that back to the barn. Great man, great vision, really changed the topography.
He'd help you in any way he could.
He gave a year of his life. Now you are a developer. Imagine if you said to Cleveland State, Dr. Seymour, I've got all these projects that I'm doing right now from 2020 to 2021, but I've decided I'm going to give all of that up, put all that on hold, and I'm only going to work for Cleveland State for the next 12 months. What value that would bring to that campus. That's what he did for Lee. He literally gave a year of his life. And
do you think some of the features they have now, he actually envisioned those back then?
No, there's no question. He worked with some great landscape architects, and that whole plaza, which is now called the Ped Mall, through the middle of campus. He and Dr. Khan and Ray did all of that. They had it in their mind. I don't have that gift. You can hand me a piece of paper and I can read it and you would think I wrote it. I can't speak Spanish, although I tried. But my teacher, Mrs. Hersey at Lee, I would read the Bible verse every morning out of the Spanish Bible, La Biblia. And she would think I knew Spanish. I could take you right now to Tres Hermanos and read the menu, and you would think I knew how to speak Spanish. So I can speak and I can articulate, but I did not have the gift of seeing that which is not as though it is. You can look at a piece of land and say, I can see that, and that's a gift. Jim had that gift and shared it at Lee for no charge to Lee, which was a great gift.
I'm sure, yeah. I know they were good. Were good friends
To the end. Till the end.
Is that table still reserved for him at Jenkins?
It's now I got his son's name on it. It says for Judge Mike Sharp. Still reserved. And there's still one with Bobby Taylor's name on it at the bistro. Even though the bistro's changed names, it's Bobby Taylor's table is still there.
Is that right?
He and his wife ate there many nights a week.
Now the Jenkins, they have another table. How many are reserved? Like
Jim, Judge Sharp's and Lloyd Rogers.
Lloyd Rogers. He eats there
Lloyd has
every day.
And Lloyd has a parking spot. That's the hardest thing to get.
Yeah.
The table, that's cool.
He eats there every day.
Every day. Yeah.
I couldn't eat. The only place I could eat every day is a Pizza Hut.
How about that?
Now, going back to the mayorship, what do you foresee? What's your big plans?
I see growth. You are a developer, so you know this is true. We've had more permits being requested and paid for, record numbers. I see growth, but with growth comes challenges. We've got some infrastructure needs that we've got to fix. The folks out on Candy's Lane are very concerned about a new subdivision that's headed that way because of the infrastructure on that area. Candy's is still, even though it's new, still too little, and Free Will the other direction.
They just now got it to where it's halfway manageable.
Halfway manageable. 60's not ready.
And maybe that when you come up the hills of that red light, that's where the trouble really is. You can't stop there.
And the really hard curve in front of what is La Quinta, it used to be the little kids nursery at the bottom of the hill. We got to fix that S. Downtown Whirlpool, I got 90 acres that we're in very serious negotiations with Whirlpool Corporation on where we're headed with that. So I've got growth on the north end.
Everybody would like to know how that's progressing and what's going to go in there.
Yep.
But I guess there's a lot of ifs.
There's a lot of ifs. We've got to get the land first. There's a lot of discussions in town about why don't you do this and why don't you do that. If it's privately owned, the city can't do a whole lot.
What was their agreement, that they would give it to the city?
No, the agreement that ironically I signed in 2007 to 2010 was that we would work for a cooperative agreement. What's good for both sides? What's a win-win? So we're now very much into some formative conversations.
Are they being fair?
You know, I mean, there's some deadline dates that they are putting before us that are pretty aggressive. You know how hard it is to get an appraisal. You know how hard it is to get something surveyed right now.
Especially now, the COVID.
So they've got some pretty aggressive timelines that they want us to meet, and we've got some pretty aggressive asks. If you want us to do this, then we need you to do that. And so I'm very proud of the city staff that we're not backing down. You know, Whirlpool's this multi-billion-dollar corporation. They could have lawyers until we're bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so far, the staff has said, we can do this. We got this. And that makes me very proud.
So they're gonna, the negotiations are for Cleveland to buy it.
At least parts of it. And how much would they be willing to donate? How much would they be willing to help us? Because there's lots of it that it would be very difficult to do something with.
But why not still take it?
That's the negotiation right now. It's how much
take
of
it all or take it none.
Yeah.
Or...
We really do want an all or nothing bid. I mean, I'm aggressive and slightly selfish. I want all 90 acres.
Yeah.
And we've got to figure out
all the way from King Edward to Wildwood to...
I especially want east of the railroad tracks right now. Everything that would be that what you and I would call behind Inman Street, buildings B and C and D.
Yeah.
All that area right now is just Boardwalk and Park Place to us. When you go west of the tracks to Plant 1, Plant 2 is right there on the tracks. That would be great. I'll take it. Plant 1, a little bit more problematic. The topography, as you know, you got the
creek.
You got the Rot House way up high. You got the creek down here. And remember, they built that in stages and steps. So there's buildings that were connected in kind of weird ways and different elevations. And that's just hard. That's just a hard piece of property to do something with. So we got to figure that out.
And all the way to King Edward, if they could go to all the way to King Edward.
Yeah,
that actually lays a little bit better.
It does.
With the exception of the creek, which can be made nice, right?
Yeah, it can be. And I mean, we've got the Greenway to prove that. I mean, we've got a wonderful, and one of the grants that we applied for would help us take the Greenway from basically Starbucks on Keith Street straight up First. If you remember where First Avenue comes up behind Larry's Car Wash all those buildings, Griffith Kawasaki and all that, and would end up, ironically, right there at Johnston Park, and we could really revolutionize. If all the residents of the Cleveland Summit are being relocated to their beautiful new Cleveland Court, $4.7 million home, and you start thinking about what needs to be done to make that downtown great again, part of it would be a Greenway, part of it would be redoing Johnston Park, definitely a large part of it would be redoing the Cleveland Summit. So as mayor, there's a great book by Andy Stanley, also from Atlanta, Visioneering, and you sort of part engineer, part visionary. Visioneering is the orchestrating and the engineering of how to get this vision accomplished. And so I'm not the engineer. I see Ben Barry's hanging on the wall behind you.
Yeah, he did a good job.
You know, I'm not the engineer. I'm not the city manager. It's my job is to cast the vision and then keep that vision alive, keep the dream alive. And so that's a lot of what I do as mayor.
Will a grant help to get that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So you've got to work for the grant.
And we've applied for 2 recently. I've got many more down the road. We haven't started the brownfield grant process because we don't own the brownfield. So as long as it's a privately owned brownfield, they don't qualify for grant money.
So you got to get the grant, get it.
No, you got to get the land, and as a municipality, apply for the brownfield grant.
But in order to buy the property,
that's a risk.
You almost have to have a grant.
It's a risk. So you got to figure.
Who does all of that? I wouldn't know. Have you ever talked to Joe Cate?
Oh, 100%.
I mean,
love Joe.
Isn't that his thing?
It's Joe's thing. It's Joe Fivas' thing. It's Tom Cates, Joe's cousin's thing. So I've got this Knights of the Round Table that I talk to all of them all the time. I think they get tired of hearing from me.
Well,
Gary Rogers is another one.
Gary, yeah. That's a group of powerful people there.
Well, and they think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Wood, who's with the Tennessee Land Commission,
Mm-hmm.
Kim White, who's running for mayor down in Chattanooga. She used to be with the River Cities. That's where Bob Corker, when they
Yeah.
totally redid the downtown. So I sit with for hours just like this. Tell me how you did it. Tell me what you did. Tell me how you got from good to great when Chattanooga was redoing the riverfront and built the aquarium and built all those hotels. And
Do you see that 90 acres as mainly one thing?
I used to.
I mean, the rumor is a football field.
No,
Everybody
no,
said
no,
that, Fred.
we're not doing that. I used to see it as one thing, but I see it now as three distinct. East of the tracks, Plant 1, I see the strip of Plant 2 right at the tracks as sort of a separate area.
Yeah.
And then I see that downtown Inman Street, buildings B, C, and D, right behind the museum and between, well, yeah, right behind Inman Street.
I guess one big developer could make a run to buy it all.
Wouldn't they have already done that, though?
I would think that Whirlpool has some kind of an obligation to not sell it out from under.
Well, and I think if they had a big developer, we've heard that for about 10 years, that there's somebody looking and kicking tires. And there's quite a bit of responsibility there for what's got to be cleaned up before it can be developed. And that's a big bite of an apple to bite off. Two things could happen. Whirlpool could help us with that, or a brownfield grant, once it's transferred to a municipality, could totally make all that go away.
Plus, in order to buy that and make it feasible, you'd have to get the brownfield grant.
I think you would.
So it's really not feasible for an
And
individual.
I had great conversations with the U.S. DA over brownfield. When I flew to Washington in March, I took one of the last flights home. They were shutting things down. As a matter of fact, we had a White House meeting at 3 o'clock the afternoon before, and it got canceled. That was right when somebody on Trump's staff tested positive, and they all got nervous.
Yeah.
And they made an immediate decision that nobody from the outside could come in for a White House meeting. We were supposed to meet with them at 3 o'clock that day. And I had scheduled a Delta flight home back to Chattanooga the next morning. And because our 3 o'clock was canceled, at 4 o'clock I was at the Washington airport getting Delta to get me home a night early. And thankfully they did, because that's when the airport started shutting down. But I was there to meet with the grant people and the brownfield office. And they loved what they saw about Cleveland. You know, I take all the bells and whistles with me and all the handouts, and they just could not say enough good things about Cleveland.
When would anybody, any community, have the opportunity to find 90 acres in the middle?
So it's a miracle.
And it's not like it's 90 acres on the fringe. It's 90 acres in the middle.
It is. I use the word transformational. If we do this right, our children's children, your 20-year-old son's children, will talk about the decisions that we're making right now about public areas and greenways, and look at some of these other industrial cities like Greenville, South Carolina, and where the North Carolina Cannon Mills, Kannapolis, what they've done with their old industrial downtowns, and it's just mesmerizing. People send me videos now. Hey, Mayor, you ought to try this. Take a look at this on YouTube. I watch them for hours because I think, what if?
I would like to see Wildwood upgraded. The road,
100%.
It's just such a big connection.
I want Wildwood, and for how many generations has Inman Street stopped at the train tracks? Why do we not improve it all the way to 64? That's the gateway to the Smoky Mountains.
It makes no sense.
And so I say, when we first came up with the plan, when I was very first elected, I said, I want this to go all the way to 64. We've got to improve it. We can't stop at the train trestle. It's got to be improved all the way past the barbershop.
The
and
APD
Spoonie's.
40 is the whole. Is Spoonie still open?
Best Philly cheesesteak in
Man,
town.
they were
Kim's
good.
dad came into town yesterday and said, that's what I'm stopping to get, a Philly cheese.
Aren't they closed?
No.
Are they back open?
100%. Pineapple tea every day.
I may go there tomorrow.
Well, if I didn't have city council,
Well,
I'd
they're
go
so
with you.
slow though.
It's okay.
They're a little slow.
You know what it is? It's quality.
Boy, they smell good, don't they?
It's quality.
They got the good ketchup and everything.
So,
good
it's
sweet tea.
one of my favorite places. Did you get the pineapple tea?
I got the pineapple tea and the catfish and the French fries and the hush puppies. It was good.
And their crinkle fries. They're old school.
I don't remember what they're, but I just remember it was really. It reminded me of that show with who was that actor in it with eating the catfish?
Yeah.
It was really good.
I'm
gonna go there
I keep
tomorrow.
waiting for diners, drive-ins, and dives to show up.
Yeah. Now I tell you somewhere else I ate that was pretty good is that trailer at Ronnie Pearson's daughter. It's that trailer by the if you let's see, before you get to, if you're coming into town before you get, it's on the right.
On the right.
They got the pat
next to Ronnie's tree service.
Yeah, it's his daughter.
Yeah.
They're really good hamburgers. I mean, they're really good.
I drove out to Shake Shack the other night. And
yeah, I've eaten there, but Spoonie's and that trailer's as good, just as good. Or a lot of the restaurants are. Last week, everybody was just open, just like normal. I mean, everybody was packed.
Yeah, they are, and I'm thankful that we're not having a peak, we're not having a problem with that. But I'm also thankful that Chick-fil-A is reporting that they're making as much money with drive-through only as they did when their lobbies were open.
Now, a guy that's had COVID, that had a bad experience, that came out of it, you're still not pro shut everything down,
I am
right?
still not. We can't. It will destroy our economy. It will destroy jobs. You know, when you're mayor of a city, you have to balance the health and welfare of your city. Physically, COVID, it's a problem. But I've got to balance the health and welfare of my city's economy. So if I shut down everything, these waitresses who are single moms who've got kids in school, how are they going to pay their bills? How are they going to pay for what little school supplies that they're able to afford? I got to get the schools open. I got to keep the restaurants open. I got to get as much back going again. So Gary and I decided best thing we could do is put out that PSA that we sent out about washing your hands and keeping socially distanced. It's common sense. That was the one thing in Nashville I was never able to accomplish. They have a Veterans Caucus and a Hunters Caucus and a Republican caucus and a Democratic caucus, and I said, what about a common sense caucus? I don't care what you are, what you believe, how you vote. If you believe common sense, let's start a caucus. Let's just do things for Tennessee that make sense.
Do you have to judge it every day to balance? I guess every day it's, do we shut down today? I mean, that's got to enter your mind till this is over.
You know, it's what you do is you pray that the peaks don't come back. You pray that the spikes don't come back. I watch every day. I do watch.
Where do you watch it at?
TN.gov.
So you don't just get it from Channel 9, or you got a real source?
Yeah. I very rarely watch what
So
people would consider.
Tennessee.gov.
Yeah, TN.gov, the health department.
How often
every day,
is it up?
Every day at 3 o'clock. 100%, every day. And so I am religiously checking that. Scroll down immediately.
Do they
to Bradley
give the
County.
recovered?
They do.
See, I don't think they need to give how many's had it.
Yeah, they give recovered.
I think they need to give
They do.
who's got it.
Positive, which is 155 in Bradley County. They do a recovered, how many fatalities. I like it better now that they're including not just the recovered, and remember for a while they did and possibles.
Yeah.
And the numbers went right
Yeah,
up.
that's crazy.
So I didn't like that because I was a possible. Those 5 days that I was in a hospital, I possibly had COVID. So I do like the numbers a little bit better. I think they're a little closer to reality right now. And the reality is that, thank God, knock on wood, we're doing okay this week. But we could have a festival. We could have the Kool-Aid Festival or
Trick or
something.
treat.
Trick or treat. You know, it worries me. So as mayor, I got the health and welfare physically and the health and welfare economically. I can't let everything shut down. People, I got a lot of flack that I didn't do what Chattanooga did. And I said, guys, we can't afford it. We can't afford to shut down our economy. There are moms and dads that would not be able to pay their rent. They would be homeless.
People are that close.
That close. And I, you know, I thank God every day that we are doing as well as we are under the circumstances, and that we continue to get better daily. Just like my recovery, and I got better every day, stronger every day. That's what our city's doing, and I'm so grateful for it.
You know, I almost don't think that people should really go too much. I'm not worried about it, etc. But I'm probably not going to go to Florida this fall break or spring break.
Yeah. And that's what the CDCs and everybody else are saying, that they're worried about the travel. They're worried about.
What about trick or treat?
My next trip is not booked until February of 2021.
What about trick or treat?
You know, M&M Mars sent me an announcement that they're going to do virtual candy. I don't even know how that's going to work.
That's
I'm not smart enough to understand virtual
Yeah.
trick or treat. But to me, what it did was, you said you must think about that every day as mayor. What it did was it automatically started making me think about October 31st,
Yeah.
Cleveland, Tennessee. What's the plan? So I sent out an email. You know, tell me what our plans are. And again, it's not my job as mayor to orchestrate. There are other people that are the conductors. My job is to pick the song. Wouldn't it be great if we sang God Bless America?
Mm-hmm.
I don't write the music. God knows I don't play the music. I'm not a musician. I don't even direct the orchestra. That's the city manager's job. My job is the voice of Cleveland. Many people, Tom would have told you when he was here, the mayor doesn't have a vote. I have a voice.
He said you have a veto.
We do have the ability to veto, but you got to do it within 5 days, and it can be overridden by the very same council that.
So all you can do is nudge.
I say voice.
It's kind of like this.
I say we have a voice. We can.
Kind of like when you're married. You just kind of nudge your wife.
Or dad.
Yeah.
You know, son, I know you don't like
Yeah.
to listen to me,
Yeah.
but let me just speak to you something. I had an older gentleman say to my son long ago, let me speak into your life. Let me say something that you need to hear right now. That's what a mayor does. Let me speak to you, my city. And this, what if we did this? What if we did this? I get lots of emails and voicemails. I had to take Facebook Messenger off my phone because so many people were trying to go around other ways to get I had too many incoming messages. So I'm starting to put myself on a social media diet so I can focus. It's very easy to get distracted. And in that process, I realized that you can get too much input to where it causes you to lose focus of what's really, really important. What's really, really important is that we keep Cleveland as strong physically, financially, in the future. We cannot afford 1 minute to look away from the wheel. You know, distracted driving. While I'm mayor, I can't afford 1 minute to be distracted and look down at my phone or look at something else. I got to keep both hands 10 and 2, and keep the car going forward.
Describe tomorrow. What time will you get up?
I'll get up early tomorrow.
What's early?
So I have to be at my Church of God office at 8. So 6:30ish, you know, not Jim Sharp early, not 4.
Yeah.
6:30. Have a cup of coffee with Kim. We always start our day together. We try to end our days together. How was your day? What is your day? Lots of moving parts for both of us. And 8 o'clock at one office. I'll probably, Sue has already left a message that there's some grants that I've got to sign for CBDG. So that's waiting for me at City Hall right now. So I know for a fact I've got things I've got to sign. Joe Fivas, city manager, at some point 10ish or 11, will begin to brief me on what usually would take place at 1.
Has he briefed you? Call you? Or?
No, we usually meet person to person. We did Zoom for the weeks that I was
So
recovering.
you'll go with your regular job at 8. And
Yeah.
by 10 o'clock, you're at his office
I'm at City Hall.
getting filled in.
And it's just like the form you got in front of you. It's going to be the agenda. It's going to be, there's the public agenda, and then there's sort of the stuff that they write in the columns for me. This has got to be, you got to have a motion. You're going to have to do this. This doesn't need to be voted on. So all you have to do is announce this. So there's kind of a script. There's kind of I guess that's the easiest way to say it, a script of how I moderate the city council meeting. Because basically that's what the mayor is. You're moderating. I got to have a motion. I got to have a second. It's got to be recorded.
Chairman, if you will,
You're chairing the meeting.
without a vote.
Robert's Rules of Order. A few weeks ago there was a motion that wasn't a proper motion. I had to say that's not a proper motion. A secondary motion was made, a substitute motion. That motion was seconded, so I had to say, well, okay, so now we have a substitute motion. Those 12 years in Nashville just ingrained that in my head. Representative Bill Dunn, Chairman Dunn, was my freshman coach in 06. And he would say, now, Kevin, close your eyes. I'd be like, Bill, we're on television. I'm not going to close my eyes. He said, close your eyes. You'll hear the cadence of the house. Da-dun, 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 da-dun. And he said, when that cadence stops or is broken, there's something going on. So listen for it. So you'll hear us at City Council. Same principle. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Like sign. You'll hear this. Da-dun, 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 da-dun. When that guy made a substitute motion, you didn't hear Fred Flintstone screech with his feet.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what happened. Everything came to a stop. And I had to think back, okay, a substitute motion, if seconded, if somebody just yells out and makes a substitute motion and nobody agrees with him, it's sort of like thin air. But he did get a second on his substitute motion, and it stops all debate, and I can only address the maker of the substitute motion,
Yeah.
as chairman of the planning
Parliamentary
commission.
procedure.
And so that's going through your mind on Monday, because it happened 2 Mondays ago.
What time is the city council meeting?
We used to have a 1 o'clock, what we called work session, and a 3 o'clock voting session. And because of COVID, we only have the 3 o'clock.
So what do you do after you've been briefed by the city?
There'll be a time for lunch. And
Where do you go?
It just depends.
By yourself?
No. Very rarely do you get any alone time. It depends on how long the briefing. Very often, Joe and I, somebody will bring Beverly or somebody will bring in Mike's, Jersey Mike's, or.
So there's a pretty lengthy briefing.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean,
As a matter of fact, my church staff, Shirley Williams, who's been with me all along and has been at the church for 42 years, she knows on Mondays that are council days, it's very possible she won't even see me all day. Then we'll go directly into, so this Monday will be a little bit longer and different. We may even start early. I've got to swear in 4 newly elected council members and a judge. You might remember Judge Painter stepped down, so Judge Banks is going to be appointed on Monday. So I've got 4 council members, oath of office, plus a judge. Only a judge can swear in a judge, so we're bringing in Mike Sharp. So there's going to be quite a few moving parts. In fact, so many moving parts, we're moving to the museum where we can have better social distancing.
That's a good idea.
So, yeah, Monday's going to be a busy day.
And then, so that's the end of your day, pretty much?
And then, Monday night, it's very common Kim and I'll grab something to eat because neither one of us are, we're both tired and we're both kind of mentally drained. And so it's very common we'll go grab a taco or something. And of course, I'm supposed to be on a diet, so she's trying to stop my taco runs.
Well, I tell you what, Kevin, I have gotten like I say, I've always voted for you, but I just have a whole new level of understanding.
And maybe somebody who's watching does too.
Hey, I appreciate you coming.
See you soon.
Thanks. Wow.